Regularly scheduled board meeting for December 11th. We welcome all those that are here in attendance this evening. We've got quite a lengthy agenda this evening, so we will get close to starting business here in a moment. I'd like to just give you a few highlights for this evening. We will be recognizing 5 different groups for special recognition this evening. There is a real cross-litany of different groups, so when we get there, we will recognize each one. We have citizens to be heard this evening. We also have 3 public hearings this evening, so if you'd like to speak to the board at Citizens to be Heard, you may do so, but if you are here to speak at one of the public hearings, you can wait until that public hearing is called and you can speak at that opportunity. Also this evening, we have a few folks I'd like to recognize. We have our Germantown resident and County Commissioner Mark Billingsley is here. Thank you for being here, Mark. As well, we have scouts from Troop 48 from Faith Presbyterian Church. You guys are over there. Raise your hand real quick. All right, those are the scouts. This evening, we will be led in our invocation by Pam Beasley. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman Forrest Owens. Please rise.
Please bow your heads with me. Gracious and Heavenly Father, as we gather here tonight for the final city meeting of 2017, let us reflect on our accomplishments and work still to be done. In doing so, we are reminded of the gifts bestowed upon our great city and our faith in your love and strength that has provided us with so much. We are grateful, Lord. We ask for your blessing on this meeting. Guide and direct our meeting so it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. Lord, with all the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, let us commit to slow down for a bit to enjoy time with our family and loved ones and prepare for a new year filled with good deeds, good work, and good spirit of the heart. May this holiday season bring joy, peace, and happiness to us all. We ask these names in your holy name. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. In addition, I believe we have some school board members that are here. We have our chair, Linda Fisher, is here. We also have Betsy Landers, school board member, Suzanne Jones, and did I leave any others out? Amy Oaf. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. We're recognizing some education folks, so how appropriate. Thank you. That brings us to item number 4 on the agenda this evening, setting the agenda. Earlier in executive session, the board met at 5:30 to go over the agenda and look over several of the items and get briefings from staff. At that particular time, it was identified that item 15, professional services agreement, right-of-way appraisal, Forest Hill Irene Road improvements, be moved from the traditional agenda and moved to the consent agenda, and that will now be item I on the consent agenda. Are there any other amendments to the agenda this evening?
Yes, ma'am.
Alderman?
As we discussed during the executive concession, I'd like to make a motion to take item B from consent, move it to the regular agenda, and item E, and move it to the regular agenda.
Let's do that in the form of 2 separate motions. If it's all right, would you make a motion to move item B to the traditional agenda? And we will subsequently mark that a number here if it passes. And then your second motion would be to move item E. Is that acceptable? So we can have 2 separate votes?
Yes, that's acceptable.
It's been moved to move item B from the traditional agenda, or from the consent agenda to the traditional agenda. It's been motioned. Is there a second? Second. It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
No.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
No.
Alderman Yonda?
No. That particular motion fails. The second motion was to move item E from the consent agenda to the traditional agenda. That has been properly motioned. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
So motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
No.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
No.
Alderman Yonda,
No.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
That motion fails. We are at the setting the agenda. It had been motioned, or it had been brought forward in executive session to add item 15 to item I. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
So moved.
So motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza,
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
The agenda has been set for this evening. Item 5, approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting on November 27th, 2017. In executive session, there were no modifications or adjustments to the minutes. Are there any at this particular time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented to the public?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
The minutes from the 27th have been approved. That brings us to special recognition this evening. I would like to ask that if Commissioner Mark Billingsley could come forward and be recognized just step to the podium. Sometimes in public service, you have to be a little bit coy, and I asked the commissioner to come this afternoon or this evening to be here at the board. And I had to tell him that he was going to make a long and lengthy presentation on county commission activities, but that was just a ruse to get you here. And we do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be here. And we also appreciate you representing the people of Germantown and your district on the county commission. I'd like to ask Alderman Yonda to come forward and present you with a special memento. And as you take it out of the package, there's a little bit more of an explanation. Commissioner, you are at events at the same pace that the aldermen come to events, whether it's at a tree lighting or it's at a ribbon cutting.
We got a special one for you.
Or if it's at any of the events in our community, and I know that you've got great practice being an alderman here on this board. And so we want you to, when you come to one of our events, or your events as well, that you would wear the colors. And so Alderman Yonda would present you with a City of Germantown fleece vest and a hat.
Thank you very much.
You may not be a hat guy, but we want you to have
Thank
both
you
as a
very
tandem.
much. That's
Thank
very
you for your
kind.
service.
Thank you. Well, I have to say this is a surprise. When the mayor summoned me down here, I wasn't real sure what was going on, but this is really a nice surprise. Thank you, Mayor Palazzolo. And I'll just briefly say, it's been a real pleasure to represent the city of Germantown as an alderman. I think being on this body well prepared me for public service downtown. And honestly, I cannot, when I talk about Germantown, it's hard to share all the good things that are going on from our school system, our sales tax revenue. People are choosing Germantown and Shelby County, which makes me very, very proud. And I really have enjoyed working with the Board of Aldermen in a different capacity, and especially working with Mayor Palazzolo and Administrator Lawton. I think we're taking Shelby County forward as a team, and I am very humbled by this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Brings us to item 6A on the agenda, would be special recognition of the Houston High School girls soccer team. So if there are representatives
Mayor,
from...
we could wait just a little bit.
Okay.
Coach Wolf was here, and I think the young ladies were instructed to be here about 6:20.
Got you, okay. we can-
I saw a few of them come in, I'm sure, with their
Well, they've been
PSAA
doing
shirts.
interviews on ESPN, I know that, and probably practicing as well.
if we could hold off a little bit on,
We'll move through the other items on special recognition and move, and then circle back to the Houston High School girls soccer team. That takes us to item 6B on the agenda, the 2017 Commission's Appreciation Dinner Gift Basket Auction. Mr. Lawton?
Mayor and members of the board, annually at our commission and committee dinner for our volunteers, we ask city staff in different departments and boards and commissions to create baskets with lots of goodies, and we auction those baskets off during this annual dinner. Huge thanks to Ms. Leslie Acera for organizing the whole event and for everybody who participated in creating one of these wonderful baskets that we auctioned at the dinner that evening. The beneficiary of this year's auction proceeds is the Germantown Education Foundation, and the city will be presenting a check in the amount of $1,396.74 to further the great work and mission of the Germantown Education Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Are there any questions or of staff? I know are we presenting a check this evening as well, or just recognizing? Michelle, I see you have an envelope down there.
Yeah.
So you do have that? If I know the executive director from the Germantown Education Foundation, Stephanie Brockway,
Yes.
is here. And Alderman Yonda, if you could do the honors, you are the end man, so to speak, and the closest to move off of the dais. Mhm. We also have members of the foundation board here this evening, Mr. Dick Like and Miss Alice Drake. And I'd like to give special recognition to Leslie Acera, who organized staff to put together these baskets that produced at our boards and commission dinner. I think some of the board members bid on some of these items to drive the price up, but close to $1,400 to go to public education in our community. So we are very thankful to you, Leslie, and to all the folks that bought these. Congratulations, folks.
Thank you for your support.
That brings us to item C on the agenda, 6C, Bicycle Pedestrian Walkability Task Force. Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. My remarks will be brief, but the purpose of this agenda item is to recognize the work that the Mayor's Bicycle Pedestrian Walkability Task Force has completed in an effort to make the city of Germantown more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. But I'd like to take this moment to recognize the hard work of Sarah Goraleski on planning staff for her work in leading this group. I only served as backup to Sarah as part of this. She truly took the lead and brought this large group together and created some consensus and direction that you saw in your packet, so I'll let her touch on some of that.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. As Mr. Ross mentioned, this summer the mayor called to action a bicycle pedestrian task force. And the reason for that was twofold at this time. One was to align with the city's strategic plan, Germantown Forward 2030, to that prioritize more walking and cycling in our community. And the other reason was to align with the city's Parks Master Plan process that is undergoing. The task force convened in July, and over 50 citizens were at the meeting, at the kickoff meeting, and throughout July, September, and in August as well, there were over 6 meetings of the task force. At that time, we had probably 40 different members that came to the meetings, and there were active work sessions. There, at those meetings, they identified different opportunities, and they lended their support for the city's further efforts in regards to bicycling and pedestrian safety. Some of the key accomplishments of the task force were a formal recommendation to the Parks Master Plan's consultants, and that was also presented at the Parks Commission meeting. There were establishment of and further support of cross-city relationships, such as with the Public Safety Commission, the Parks Commission, and the Education Commission, just to name a few. There was establishment of enhanced relationships with other organizations in our community, such as the City of Memphis's Bicycle and Pedestrian Program, the GMSD, then the Memphis Hightailers. The task force created a comprehensive list of priorities and concerns, and also submitted a draft document that you have in your packet of recommendations for the city to follow. Additionally, the mayor also led a walk downtown through the Bicycle and Pedestrian Task Force, and the task force members were also part of various city events, such as the Night Rider, the Walk to School, and also involved in Walk Across Tennessee. And I just wanted to see if the other co-chair was here. Alderman Owens was one of our chairs. Is Steve Pretty here this evening? He is not. Okay. Mr. Pretty did say that he would try to make it, but he would have another. He had another engagement this meeting. However, there may be some other members of our task force here this evening. I wanted to see if any of the, could you please stand up, the other members of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Task Force that are here?
All right.
Thank you very much for your dedication, your time. As I mentioned, there were 6 meetings, and we had at times over 40 interested people that came to this meeting and were very dedicated. Alderman Owens, would you like to add any remarks?
I'd love to, especially to say thanks to you, Sarah. Like Mr. Ross mentioned, we had some 50 people in this group, and to say the least, many of them were very, very passionate about what they do, whether it be cycling or walking, and you really did a good job of kind of steering everyone in the right direction. I also would like to thank Steve Pretty, my co-chair, who did yeoman's work on organizing and providing some helpful insight. Wait for it here. Things are really on a roll in Germantown. I'm going to be here all week. With the recent award we got with the Healthier Tennessee Community Award, the first annual award, and now with the commissioning of this task force and the completion of its work, I mean, people know the benefits of cycling and walking in our community, with whether it be to improve our wellness, reduce emissions, environmental improvement. And so I was very proud of the work that this commission did, or this task force did. The 3 tenets that we came forward with were connectivity, and that be connecting people through cycling or walking to our central business district, to our greenways, to our parks, and vice versa to the neighborhoods in which they live. Also improving safety on the greenways and safety for our pedestrians and our cyclists. And then also, we heard a good bit of deal about maintaining our infrastructure. We have a wonderful bicycle path network and greenway network, but we maybe need to do a little bit better in terms of improving that. And so we are going to be working with staff members are going to be assigned to that. Beginning next year, we're going to be placing some items in the budget for maintenance, specifically as it deals with pedestrian and cyclist bike paths and greenways. And we look forward to working with the board in the coming year on this project. So thank you again, all of you. Really appreciate the work, and you're not going anywhere. We're going to keep you around as an advisory council when we have questions.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff on the particular task force? I will just add, Sarah, thank you very much. I appreciate the work of both co-chairs, the task force. Mayors assign task force, and then they get out of the way and do no work whatsoever. So the 60 folks or so that came forward and did a lot of work, it's very much appreciated, and we are identifying things to move that forward and make sure that safety is paramount in biking, walking, running, using our parks. So I do appreciate all the work, and just a round of applause for those task force members here. Thank you. The next 2 items in special recognition both involve Education Commission recognition for Teacher of the Month and Student of the Month. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. If I could have the members of the Education Commission come forward, as well as Mr. Tom Kalajay. As you can see, we have one of the hardest working commissions in the city. I'm pleased to see Chairman Mindy Fisher, Steve Chandler, Scott Williams, Manjeet Kaur, Sean Lane, and Ms. Betsy Landers as the GMSD liaison. It is an honor for the Germantown Education Commission to present the December 2017 Teacher of the Month Award to Mr. Tom Kalajay. Mr. Kalajay is a 12th grade English Mr. Kalejay is a 12th grade English and mythology teacher at Houston High School, where he holds his students to the highest academic and ethical standards. He teaches with his door open because, according to his colleagues, he is proud of the work he and his students are doing every day. Blending humor and subject matter expertise, Mr. Kalejay's classes are engaging and demanding at the same time. He has had such an impact on his students that the senior class has selected him to walk with them during graduation for the last several years. Outside of the classroom, Mr. Kalejay is the head softball coach and has magically been able to balance grading 12th grade essays and the demands of coaching. A Germantown resident, Mr. Kalejay is a regular at community athletic and musical events and walks to Houston High School from his nearby home after a stop at Houston Middle, where his children attend. He has been the faculty sponsor for the Houston High chapter of Best Buddies, the Student Government Association, and has been instrumental in Houston's state-leading ACT scores as a leader in Houston's ACT boot camp. Mr. Kalejay, please accept our appreciation of your commitment to Germantown students and to excellence every day. Your award is sponsored by Principal Toyota. And if I could ask Miss Ella Barron to come forward, please. The December 2017 Youth Excellence Award is presented to Eleanor Ella Barron, a senior at Houston High School. Ella was described to the commission as determined, intellectually curious, conscientious, independent, and a natural-born leader, and her scholastic and extracurricular accomplishments bear out that description. She has achieved an excellent academic record while balancing the demands of her leadership role on the varsity track and cross-country teams. Ella has a special interest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM. She has participated in 4 residential STEM summer camps, and this past summer was selected for the highly competitive Governor's School for Computational Physics. I can barely say that. She is currently enrolled in AP Physics 2, among other highly demanding and rigorous courses, and was recently named an AP Scholar with Distinction. She is a member of the National Honor Society, the National Beta Club, and Mu Alpha Theta National Mathematics Honor Society. Ella excels outside of the classroom as well. As a founder of the Houston chapter of the Beyond Boundaries Club, she has helped her classmates appreciate other cultures and has led the club's effort to begin and continue the dialogue among Houston students about diversity and tolerance of cultural differences. Her humble spirit and clear academic prowess is a model for her classmates to emulate. She represents the best of Germantown. In recognition of her commitment to leadership, academic excellence, and service to her classmates, the Germantown Education Commission is proud to present Ms. Ella Barron with the December 2017 Germantown Youth Excellence Award.
On behalf of the board, both our Teacher of the Month and Student of the Month, congratulations. We're so very proud of both of you. And I think that we probably have the Houston soccer team here. So we will move to that item on the agenda. Is Coach Wolf here this evening as well? Coach, if you could come forward and turn and face the crowd and maybe have your captains come with you. You have such a big squad that I am going to do my best to in essence, give the kind of a starting lineup, and I hope that I pronounce your names correctly. I'm going to make the best effort that I can. There are 39 people on this list, and I'm going to ask the Vice Mayor to come down, and she will present the proclamation after it is read. We are so proud of this team, and you receive accolade after accolade and have for year after year, and but it never gets old, does it, Coach? No, it does not. And so as I call your name, ladies, if you would just stand up and remain standing, and I'll go through the entire roster. Amaya Andrews, Hallie Bronson, Lindsay Bush, Lauren Clark, Caitlin Kraus, Adrian Darnell, Gabrielle Daw, Madison Dismuke, Catherine Dukes, Madeline Eskin, Ella Garner, Miller Garner, Parker Galinas, Peyton Galinas, Jordan Green, Emma Grugit, Kate Handel, Emily Hartstill, Megan Heinz, Emma Harrington, Grace Johnson, Jenna Kemp, Gertie Langford, Carly Lashober, Maggie Leslie, Mandy Merkel, Kristen Monk, Riley Quinn, Emma Rails, Bailey Rose, Molly Rose, Abby Rushin, Gracie Rushwin, Maya Scott, Sydney Samoji, Hallie Stafford, Anna Sumner, Gillen Vandergriff, Kara Young. How about a round of applause real quick? And please remain standing. I'm going to read this proclamation into the record. City proclamation, whereas the Houston High School varsity girls soccer team defeated the town of Collierville, yay, in Murfreesboro for the school's 36th state championship and the program's 8th state championship overall. And whereas the win closed another perfect season, 24-0 for the Lady Mustangs, and whereas for 14 consecutive years, the girls soccer program has won the district, regional, and sectional championship while earning a berth in the state tournament. That is the longest active streak in Tennessee. And whereas the Lady Mustangs are currently ranked #1 in the nation by USA Today, now therefore the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of the City of Germantown takes great pride in honoring the Houston High School varsity girls soccer team and hereby proclaim December 11, 2017 as Houston High School Varsity Girls Soccer Team Day. We have one other special recognition, and I'm going to ask everyone to have a seat for a moment, and then when we conclude this special recognition, I'm going to do my normal disclaimer and say that we're going to take a short break so that all of you can go home and have dinner, unless you'd like to stay. With 20 or 19 items on our agenda, I promise you probably will want to take me up on my offer. We have a little bit of bittersweet news to share with you today as far as the city is concerned, and this gentleman's going to be very much quite surprised by this proclamation, and I'm sure that you will remember that you will have shared this with the best ladies soccer team in the country as well. Tonight we will mark the conclusion of a fine career of the city of Germantown as Butch Eder enters retirement. So, a proclamation is in store for Butch. Whereas, I thought it was always Butch. Rodney Butch Eder began his career with the city of Germantown in 2006, and whereas was appointed Capital Improvements Manager for the city of Germantown, and has served with integrity and demonstrated a high degree of organizational skill. And whereas, as a valued member of the General Services Department, Butch has demonstrated his commitment and loyalty to the city of Germantown. And whereas, under Butch tutelage, the city's CIP program has grown exponentially, all while staying on or under budget. Prior to his arrival, the program was only producing 2 projects per year. It has since grown to 28 projects consistently. And whereas, Butch has been a dedicated employee for the city of Germantown and gives meaning to the term public servant through his commitment to the basic values of the city's core values, also known as the spirit of Germantown. And whereas, after 11.5 years of public service, Butch has decided to retire and spend more time fishing, and enjoying his family. Now, therefore, I, Mike Palazzolo, Mayor of the City of Germantown, Tennessee, on behalf of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and all citizens of Germantown, congratulate Butch Etter on his many achievements and accomplishments during his tenure with the City of Germantown and express great appreciation for his dedication to our community, and do hereby proclaim Monday, December 11th, 2017, as Butch Etter Day. Butch, thank you.
Mayor, as you go forward, if I could take just a moment to say, Butch Etter, what a pleasure it has been to work with you. We butted heads way before I ever became an alderman on the Park Commission, and you did it with grace and professionalism, and you are a true servant, civil servant. And I will say that this is your third retirement, is that right?
That's right.
So good luck with that.
I think this one will stick.
It may be so, but you've left us in great shape, and we thank you so, so much.
Well, I didn't go undefeated during my term here, but I do think we accomplished a lot. I was very fortunate to be involved in a lot of major capital projects, and it's been very rewarding to see these projects come to fruition during my time here. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Butch. As I mentioned, ladies, and then other special recognition award winners, if you'd like to take this time to go home and eat, you may do so now. We'll take about a 1-minute recess as they file out. Thank you. Happy holidays to all of you. Yeah. Thank you. See you, buddy. Thank you. Butch, I will, as things have gotten back to normal, I will say this, because I didn't get a chance to say it earlier, so I was presenting you with the proclamation. I can remember a time, and I don't remember the exact project, but we were up against a deadline. I was an alderman at the time. I think I was walking my dog on a Saturday or Sunday at the farm park, and you were out pulling tarp on your own time and getting this the project ready and making sure that it was going to be on time, and it just really stuck in my mind that on a Sunday, you're out here doing work. So Butch, thank you for everything. Enjoy your retirement. You'll be missed from us. That takes us to item number 7 on the agenda, Alderman Liaison Reports. We go 1 through 5. Alderman Barzizza.
The Economic Development Commission met on December the 7th with, we had a special guest that night. His name was Zach Ferguson from the Workforce Investment Network, who made the presentation. WIN is was created in 2000 with the #1 goal of providing job seekers with online presence and searching for job opportunities, career counseling, training, and also providing services for the workforce in various types, youth services such as tutoring, leadership development, also adult mentoring, and many more services. They too offer business services for employees, offering such as access to the labor pool, custom pre-screening and custom recruiting, and assist in job fairs with employers across the community. Mr. Ross discussed new activity in various commercial areas of the district, such as East Poplar, with 2 new businesses that are coming to open here real soon if they've not already opened. A coffee bar called Cappuccino, and a unique concept in a workout place called Hot Works. I'm not going to get into the way they do business, but it's kind of different. In the Wolf River area, Campbell's Clinic is making a very large expansion, and that was addressed as well. That concludes my remarks tonight.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. The Beautification Commission will be holding their work session tomorrow night at the Parks and Rec office to select this year's winners of the Holiday Lighting Contest. This year, nominations were collected online and by individual commission members that were combing the city to find the most beautiful and festive holiday decorations and displays. The winners will be announced on the city's website. The commission would like to thank the Germantown businesses who supported this contest by providing gift cards to the winners. The Education Commission is still busy preparing for the annual Battle of the Brains competition at Houston High School on February 3rd. This science, technology, engineering, and math competition is held each year for any student who either lives in Germantown or attends a Germantown high school. The deadline for applications has been extended until January 8th. If you have any questions, you can certainly contact me or our staff liaison, Stacy Ewell. The Tennessee Genealogical Society held their December luncheon, and the Library Board continues to be encouraged by citizens' participation in the Every Book Counts initiative. Everyone needs to still get a library card. All children ages 0 to 4 need to be registered for books from birth. And we want you to continue to log in the number of pages read so a GMSD school can receive a classroom makeover for the winner of the competition. This month, the Board of Zoning Appeals did not have any applicants, and that's my report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
Mayor, we didn't have any meetings. I do want to say thanks to the Public Safety Education Commission and the firemen and police who helped with the float that the commission rode on during the Christmas parade. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Owens.
Function here. Yes, so the Parks and Recreation Commission held a work session with their Parks and Recreation Master Plan Steering Committee. That was on November 30th, and we reviewed the final design concepts recommended for several of the city's major parks, along with recommendations from the Bicycle Pedestrian Walkability Task Force. After much feedback from citizens and multiple meetings with stakeholders and user groups, the revised parks plan and recommendations from the Bike Ped Task Force were met with consensus and all parties recommending to move the project forward to this board. Staff is going to work with administration to set up a work session with our board in January to review the plan and determine a date for our final adoption.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Yonda.
Thank you, Mayor. The Environmental Commission had a holiday party, and we had no agenda. It was great.
Thank you. You used your time wisely, obviously. Thank you. From the Mayor's office, just a couple of quick items. Just want to report that sales tax collection for November was up 7% over budget. We had the largest month to date with over $835,000 collected, so continue to shop local, shop Germantown. From the Memphis Area Association of Realtors, their numbers are in for November. We are up over 2016. Sales price is up 13.1%. In 2016, the average home was $318,000, and in 2017, it's close to $360,000. Also, I'd like to recognize staff member Catherine Perdue, Assistant Director of Procurement. She received the Senior Professional and Supply Chain Management Certificate from the Next Level Purchasing Association. She used her own time and resources, and I think it took over 48 hours of instruction and class training. So please share our congratulations with Catherine. And finally, I would just like to say that staff met last week with a group from the National League of Cities and the Institute for Building Technology and Safety. We are a finalist with one other city for a resiliency grant that will help us in any natural and man-made disasters or hazards. So we should know something sometime in February whether we win that award as well. That concludes all of the Alderman liaison reports. That brings us to item number 8 on the agenda this evening. That is citizens to be heard. Any sheets, clerk? No items coming forward. That brings us to item number 9. We are now recessed as a Board of Mayor and Aldermen and now convened as the city's beer board for the purpose of having a public hearing on a beer permit for off-premise application Rite Aid, store number 7205. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. The city has received a request from Walgreens Corporation for a permit to sell beer for off-premise consumption at Rite Aid, number 7205, located at 7570 West Farmington. Walgreens is buying the asset, the Walgreens store located at this location. However, Rite Aid will maintain their name during this acquisition. A copy of the permit application is attached with your agenda sheet along with the police department's record check on the authorized representative of this group, which is the local manager who will be managing the Rite Aid, soon to be purchased by Walgreens. There are a series of attachments that are included with your agenda sheet, including the application, the letter of purchase, recognizing this purchase by Jennifer Maxey with Walgreens, background checks on the applicant, the zoning confirmation, and the required public notice regarding this evening's activity, because this is a public hearing. Based upon the police department's background check on the store manager, nothing has come back to discredit this individual. And based on all the information prepared and attached, the administration recommends approval of this beer permit.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. There is a public hearing this evening, so we will open that here in a moment. Before that, is there a motion to approve the request from Walgreen Company for a permit to sell beer for off-premise consumption at Rite Aid number 7205, located at 7570 West Farmington?
Move to approve.
Is a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, so the motion is on the table. I would now open a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward to either podium and speak on this application for permit of off-premise application for beer? Anyone who would like to come forward and speak to the beer board? Third and final call. Anyone who would like to come forward and speak to the board? Seeing no one come forward, that concludes the public hearing portion of this agenda item. Questions for staff?
Are none, but the manager is here, Mr. Jett, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you for being here, applicant. Any questions for staff? It's been properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda.
Here.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
The item is adopted and approved. You have your permit. That concludes the business before the beer board. We are adjourned as a beer board and now reconvened as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That brings us to item number 10 on the agenda, the consent agenda. I'll go through and read into the record each item on the consent agenda. Item 10A, construction contract, customer service center improvements. Item 10B, design supplement number 2, design standards for Forest Hill Heights small area plan. Item 10C, recognition of donation farm park. Item 10D, recognition of donation parks and recreation. Item 10E, recognition of grant award, Memphis Area Association of Realtors. Item 10F, purchase multipurpose all-terrain transport equipment. Item 10G, right-of-way acquisition, Track 27, Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard intersection improvement project. Item 10H, reimbursement from Tennessee Task Force 1. And item 10I, which was added to the consent agenda, formerly item 15, professional services agreement, right-of-way appraisal, Forest Hill Irene Road improvements. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified?
So moved.
Is a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Sure.
So I'm opposed to having two of these items on the consent. I asked it to be moved to the regular agenda, and I'd like to explain why. The design supplement number 2B is the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan. This has to do with having a design supplement for the contractor that did the original design and studied the density and other issues related to Forest Hill Heights. So this particular issue, we're rehiring the folks that determined that the current density level and apartments and things of that nature in Forest Hill Heights is the correct path for Germantown. And I think in the interest of transparency, we should have had a discussion on this rather than burying it in the consent. And I feel the same way about the recognition grant award, where Memphis Area Association of Realtors gave $5,000 to the city to hire a consultant to come and push smart growth. Again, I think in the interest of transparency, the people of Germantown need to know who's pushing the smart growth. And in this case, it's the Memphis Area Association of Realtors. We have realtors who serve on our board. And I think the public needs to recognize that and hold people accountable for their decisions, their relationships, and understand maybe some of the things that are influencing decisions as they pertain to smart growth, as they pertain to these apartments, as they pertain to the density in our city. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Absolutely.
Consent agenda has been approved as modified. That brings us to item number 11 on the agenda this evening, policy, medical, and pharmacy stop insurance. Let's see here, Mr. Walensky.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and Board, thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider approval of a new policy for the City of Germantown stop-loss insurance for calendar year 2018. I want to thank our Procurement Director, Lisa Piefer, and our consultant, ESP LLC, Mr. Bob Shoup, Ms. Britley Spradling, for their assistance throughout the bid process and with both of our presentations tonight on stop-loss insurance for the city's health plan and also with the life and long-term disability insurance coverage for our employees. Ms. Piefer will explain the bid process shortly. Ms. Spradling has a brief PowerPoint presentation for both agenda items and will be available to answer questions about the analysis of the bids and the recommendations before you tonight. So medical and RX or pharmacy stop-loss insurance protects employers from assuming all the liability for losses that result from an unexpected amount of claims, either from an individual or from an entire workforce. If expenses go above these limits, the stop-loss carrier will assume the liability. The city has used the services of a stop-loss carrier for over 20 years. The stop-loss carrier works as a safety net to protect the city's self-insured plan. For example, if an individual claim exceeds $115,000, this insurance will reimburse the city 100% of the paid eligible claims that exceed that specific deductible amount. We currently have a $115,000 individual stop-loss deductible with an annual premium of $589,979.28 with American Fidelity Insurance Company. Our experience over the last several years has allowed our rates to remain stable. The recommendation for this year includes a rate increase of less than 5% to $617,187.48. Given our low employee turnover, roughly 4% a year, and a gradual increase in covered retirees and dependents, along with an overall increase in healthcare spending that we're all aware of, especially for medical care and pharmaceutical use, we believe this is a reasonable adjustment. This agenda item supports Germantown Forward 2030 City Services and Finance Strategic Objective Number 4, where the city provides high-quality services, takes pride in our technically competent workforce and is dedicated to serving customers. And strategic objective number 5, the city will provide services that are responsive to customer needs. Ms. Pfeffer will now describe the bid process, and she'll be followed by Ms. Spradling, who has a brief PowerPoint and will explain the review and recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky. Staff prepared the bid with assistance from the city's consultant, ESPL LC. We advertised, as we customarily do, on the city's website and sent to over 1,200 e-notice subscribers, as well as the previous year's bidders. 3 vendors requested documents for this bid. The city received 1 bid from Health Cost Solutions, as well as received a no bid from a additional vendor declining to bid because of our requirement of a third-party administrator. We have a third-party administrator already in place. They wanted us to have an administrative services agreement, which would make us have 2 third-party administrators basically administrating those claims. So we did decline, and they could not provide the information for us. The procurement staff reviewed the bid submission, and HCS has met all the bid requirements and listed with no exceptions. The information was compiled by our staff and sent to our consultants for review. Ms. Spradling of ESP will now review the analysis and their report.
All right. Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Pfeffer. I just wanted to go over some highlights from the analysis sheets that were provided. So first, I wanted to go over the head count. So the head count is 458, and you definitely have more covered lives than 458 here in the city of Germantown. But I just wanted to let you know that first sub-bullet that says stop loss is only quoted on the numbers of employees and retirees that are covered. So dependents are not part of that count. You don't pay premium for stop loss on the dependents. And then the total cost, though, when you look at your total costs, they're dependent on all the claims and the premium. Additional tiers also were added this year to better account for the city's population. So if you will remember, last year you only had employee only and family. This year you all have added employee only, then employee plus spouse, employee plus child or children, and employee plus family. So those updated tiers more appropriately spread the risk to your group. Next, discussing the cost. Your current annual specific and aggregate stop loss costs, the annual cost is $589,979.28. Broken out monthly, that premium is $52.09 per employee, or per covered employee, I should say, and $133.63 per covered employee that is covering their family. The aggregate premium is $4.98 per employee. The bid that came in, that proposed annual cost is $617,187.48. The monthly broken out premium would be $51.80 for just an employee. It's $124.73 for an employee plus spouse, $88.27 for employee plus children, and then someone who's covering their entire family, that premium is $173.34. And you'll note the aggregate cost is the exact same this year as was last year. It's $4.98 per covered employee. And then just one more slide to show you looking back. So the proposed is the column on the far left, which shows the same rates that I just went over, and then looking back all the way to 2012, just to see, looking at over the previous years. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Thank you. That concludes staff presentation. Is there a motion to authorize the mayor and board to enter into a policy with American Fidelity Insurance Company for medical RX stop-loss insurance coverage for the period of January 1st through December 31st, 2018, with an annual administrative cost of $617,187.48.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions for staff or discussion? Vice Mayor.
Ms. Pfeffer, if you could come forward just for a moment. I know that when we spoke on the phone about this, referring back to page 2 of 5 on the application schedule. Specifically, you've got this.
Okay.
Specifically about the benefits incurred from the date of January 1, 2013. We discussed why that was important, why that number going back that far.
It takes the experiencing case from it's a 60-12, make sure I'm saying it right. It's a 60-12 experience. Basically, it takes all the incurred claims from 2013 to 2018. The reality of someone coming back and actually hitting that and actually coming in there is probably nil and none. However, it would cover us if something did happen, if we missed a payment, but it would be paid for in that policy year. So you'll see 2013 to 2018, then you will see the January 1 to December 31st. It would be paid during that time, but it would be covered during that larger period of time. Did I do that correctly?
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I would like the last slide that you had, the last picture you had, and I can't read them from here. Okay. Would you mind going from 2012 over to the current date?
Do you want me to read each premium for each column?
Primarily, well, yes, please.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just say for the year of 2012, if that works. So the reinsurance carrier was Reliastar. The employee-only premium was $112.68. And then employee family, because remember you only had 2 tiers, is $287.11. The aggregate premium was $7.69. And then looking at the 2013 year, the employee-only premium was actually your reinsurance carrier went to Sun Life. The employee-only premium was $114.19, with employee family at $288.20. The aggregate premium was $6.35. And then in 2014, you switched to American Fidelity as the reinsurance carrier. The employee-only premium was $59.87. Employee family was $159.19, with an aggregate premium of $4.42. 15, still with American Fidelity. Employee-only was, it's the same. I think you might have had a 2-year rate guarantee, except for the aggregate premium went to $4. In 16, the employee-only premium was $58.04. The family was $145.77 with aggregate premium of $498. In 17, so your current is $52.09 for employee only and $133.63 for employee family with a $498 aggregate. And then the proposed reinsurance policy was the employee only is $51.80, employee spouse is $124.73, employee child is $88.27. Employee family is $173.34 with an aggregate premium of $4.98.
Okay, so then since 2012, we had some losses, I'm assuming, Mr. Lawton, back in 2012?
Was that your question, John? Yes, and I think that also reflects going from the broker process of bringing insurance forward as opposed to competitive bidding, and we saw a dramatic decrease. That's the biggest factor.
Did we not have some losses, though?
But it was up and down those years.
Some serious health issues with some folks.
Yeah, it's hard for me to go back and think about that, but I can tell you exactly the most dramatic impact on that price reduction.
Now, wouldn't that have a direct effect on the cost of the policy in a few years after that?
It would, particularly as it related to what the stop loss limit would be. 115,000 or 150,000 would gauge that, but we've been fortunate that we've been able to keep the stop loss right at 115,000 because of our experience. What happens next year, the year after that was...
So my question is for either one of these ladies and yourself, with the losses that we incurred in 2012 and before, because that rate was as a result of losses prior to 2012, where does the thing shift back the other way?
When do you start going back up to the higher
when
premium?
you don't have, when does it, how many years, what I'm trying to say is how many years does it take for losses in the past to kind of go away, disappear,
Typically,
be not part of the new policy?
They'll look at your claim experience every year. Every reinsurance carrier will look at your claim experience. And actually, your current claim experience, this current year, I would have expected probably even a more dramatic increase than what you've experienced. So there's no precise way to say in 5 years, in 10 years, you're going to have a huge increase. We really don't know what's going to happen.
No, I'm not saying what's going to happen going further. I'm talking about where is that break? When does the insurance company say, okay, you're absolved, you've done your mea culpa, and you've had your losses, and going forward, the people that were part of that loss are no longer associated with the city. And so going forward, do you have any idea as to when that took place, where those people who caused such losses?
If you'd like to, because you have more experience with that one.
It is true that people do drop off, unfortunately, because they pass away, in some cases from some dramatic illness. And then some folks have illnesses that continue from year to year, and we can look at their past experience and tell, as the underwriters do, that claim is probably going to be there for a number of years. So they anticipate that in their rating. But as life happens, when we have an individual who has had some serious claims drop off, we have no idea who's going to be diagnosed that year and pick up and take that place. And we don't know.
That wasn't my question, though.
Okay.
My question was, I'm not going forward with any increases. All I'm trying to find out is if there was a person who was a serious issue as far as our costs are concerned going back prior to 2012. And when that person drops off the rolls, how long does it take for the insurance company to say, they're gone, and so the slate is, for all practical purposes, wiped clean?
If that person is verified to be not on the plan any longer for whatever reason, it's immediate.
Okay,
That
answers my question.
It is immediate, again, for that individual, but the rating is impacted by over, I don't know how many lives total we have. We have 400-something employees plus all the dependents. We don't know what's going to show up to take their place and impact that rate. But as Ms. Spradling mentioned, we have had some pretty good claims this year. And we would expect, if it had that large of an impact, for this year's rates to have gone up. But what we see industry-wide with the multiple clients we work with, even if we had a large increase, we rarely see going back to those numbers in 2012. Now, there's a reason for that, and that's because stop-loss insurance or reinsurance is totally different than regular insurance in the way it's rated. Stop-loss carriers may have what's called capacity, and there are a lot of stop-loss carriers, and there may be a stop-loss carrier out there who wants the business, and they're willing to give you that good rate. So, and the other important factor dealing with stop-loss, it isn't a good idea generally to change insurance companies every year if you're on a fully insured basis. However, on stop-loss does not impact the employee at all. It's a back office between them and the plan. So companies, self-insured companies, often will change stop-loss carriers every year. You just have to be conscious of your contract basis and the dates and make sure that no claims are caught in a gap. That's the most important thing to watch. But it is a very fluctuating market and can have some dramatic rating. Did that get to your point? Thank you.
Any further questions? Alderman Yonda.
Well, I'd just like to mention I was in charge of the liaison for the PAC at the time. The majority of the reason is a change in our bidding process caused the drop in the premiums. There's always someone that steps up and gets drastically sick, unfortunately. In any of these cases, we have people who are getting over the 115,000. But it's definitely part of the changes that we did in our bidding process. I can assure you that.
Any other questions for staff? Alderman?
So I'm looking at our total annual fully funded cost, and it looks like it's going from around 6 million to 7 million. Can you explain that?
Yes, sir. So the fully funded cost would be if that's the part where the aggregate insurance would kick in. The increase is due because it's not just the fixed cost, it's also the claims costs. So they're anticipating your expected plus about a 25% top on that. So
That's a big increase. So that
It is.
That's where my concern lies, because it's really not sustainable. This is something I know y'all, I think, recognize. What we can do with it, I don't know. I get how losses play into the premium. I understand that part of it. Did we look at any type of guaranteed cost type program? Or are we looking at possibly going back away from the self-insured program at some point in the future? No.
We're about to enter each year, it's with stop loss, we review the stop loss plan each year. And to your point, if there's a more efficient way for us to do this, while considering the risk and managing the risk to the city and the taxpayer, we would do that.
Okay.
We will do that.
And since the issue of the bidding came up, I did get a call today. This doesn't affect our brokers, but it is a question for Ms. Piefer and Mr. Walensky. This individual called and said that the issue to bid notification went out on November 6th, and then the question deadline was November 8th. And then the bid submittal date was November 14th, and then board approval is tonight, which is the December 11th. As a broker myself, I can tell you that's just not enough time to get these packets together, review them, and get competitive bids. And I think that may be one of the reasons that you had brokers who just decided not to provide bids this year. It's not a reflection on what our current brokers did. But if we're going to tout the city's ability to lower premiums by getting competitive bids, we need to give people time to go to market and get those competitive bids. So if something's wrong about this timeline, but even if it's within a few weeks, I mean, it's still not enough time for a broker to get the information and go to market and determine whether or not you need a self-insured plan or something different.
I won't disagree that it was a quick timeline for us. However, all vendors are allowed to submit questions and submit those things if they need additional time. I spoke to vendors too and told them, if you would like additional time, please submit that in writing and we'll address it for you. And we got none. We didn't get any responses, and I did speak to them. So this year, every year when we do our bid process for this, it's around the same time, simply because we try to get as much of the census for them in place. So if we don't have those last 2 months of that year, it's hard. As I've understood over the last 4 to 5 years that we've done this, it's very hard for us to put out a bid and get that back and have all that information for them and get it in a timely manner. One of the things that we will be doing going forward, Alderman Massey, is looking in that as part of our third-party administrator process. When we get to a point to that, that will be up in the end of this year. That is customary. 2018, excuse me. I'm sorry, Marie, in the new year. But it is customary that the TPA actually handles and goes out and gets those quotes for you. It's a much better, cleaner process, and it will give that enough time to go out there and shop that. So those are one of the things we'll be looking at going forward. As Steve mentioned earlier about looking at different ways that we can be cost effective. That our consultant has also mentioned different things concerning the stop loss and the coverage and self-funding and so forth. So all of that is going to be looked at going forward. I think you've heard us talk about the RX and the medical claims, and the RX claims are killing us, to be honest with you. Those are things we're going to look at going forward in that whole process. So while I won't disagree with you that it was a fast timeline, it was necessary for us to do it that way. However, going forward, believe me, I don't want one bid.
Yeah.
I want to be able to get folks out there, but we did ask the questions, and I did talk to folks about giving us that, because I would have gladly push it off a little bit, but we didn't get that, so I had
Well,
to go with what we had.
From a broker's perspective, if I saw this, I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just talking out loud now. So from a broker's perspective, if you see this timeline, you just walk away and you spend your time doing something else. So you may scare people away. You may not have gotten a request to extend the deadline because people just said, I'm not even going to ask. I'm just going to spend my time on something else at this point. So you mentioned the RX. How many retirees do we have on the plan now?
Alderman, I don't think I have that exact number.
Well, it's okay. If we could get those numbers and the losses and give that to the board and show exactly how some of our claims break down between retirees, what the retiree is paying compared to current employees, and break down the drug cost, break down the medical cost, so that the board can get an idea of what is driving our medical expenses up and how much of these costs are being shared by the employee. Just for the public's sake, I am on this health insurance now, and I can tell you this is not a plan that I could find in the corporate world at this price. That what I and my family pay to be on the city's insurance is very, very low. And so the taxpayer is doing us a big favor, but they're footing a big part of this bill from what I recall our conversations being, Ms. Williams. And that's good. I know you want to reward the employees, but that's something I think going forward that we have to look at, because I am really concerned about whether or not this is going to be sustainable.
I'm not sure it's a matter of reward. It's also a matter of retain.
Retain, I know. I get it.
And when we place such a high value on public safety, public works, and the control, the management of the infrastructure, the numbers you ask for, I do have them. If you look back at the last, and I'll get them to everybody, but if you look back at the last 4 years, and especially the last 2 years, you're seeing a tremendous escalation in the areas that Ms. Piefer cited, medical and RX. Just to give you one example, among retirees in 2014, and this is an approximate number, claims paid, actual paid out, were in the range of 550,000. Claims paid out to retirees, which includes their dependents, in 2017 reached 1.3 million. Now, when you look at that, it sounds like, well, that's a big number, and it is. The thing that's interesting is it doesn't take much to do that. As we talked about with stop loss, it takes just a couple of cases, and one of the things I've learned recently, it's been pointed out to me, we tend to think of these as people who have some serious illness that requires hospitalization and surgery. Now, with the expensive medications, they may not have a hospital procedure at all. It just may be the annual expense of medication, but I'll certainly get that information to everybody.
I think the board would just appreciate a review of the structure of the plan. You know, is there a way to class out some of these individuals and possibly make changes there to save some premium? And I understand we want to retain the employees, and I'm not disputing that, but I just think for the sake of the taxpayer, we have to look at these things.
And you also know from your involvement with the Personal Advisory Commission.
Absolutely.
We took the recommendations of the Advisory Commission. We did take those to administration. We have made those changes. We're in the process of rolling out through in-service with primarily me and one other of our staff, those changes, which include deductibles, premiums, co-pays, a third tier for pharmacy, et cetera. So we heard, we vetted, we took the recommendations, we passed them on, and we're making those changes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Barzizza.
To the insurance folks in general, is there a grace period? If for some reason this was voted down tonight, is there a grace period in order for us as a city to come back to you at a later date? And would we be covered, our people be covered for whatever period of time that would be?
No, sir.
Okay, that answers the question.
I'm not sure I completely understand that, because generally, you know, with health insurance, under this current plan, since it's a stop loss, it may work a little bit differently. And if that's the case, that's the case. I think that Cigna's our reinsurer. Is that correct? No.
American Fidelity.
American Fidelity. Okay. So with this particular self-insured plan, then we can't get an extension and carry this on into the next month.
We asked for firm rates, guarantee, so that we would be prepared to go January 1. We don't have any other possibilities. It expire, our current policy expires at 11:59:99 and 99 seconds, or 12 a.m. on the 1st. So we don't have any other options.
Any other questions for staff? Vice Mayor?
Mr. Walensky, can you come forward? The questions that have been raised tonight, good questions. Would you have been able to answer those had we brought those to you prior to the nth hour?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
Any other?
Point out,
Alderman Massey.
we get
Alderman Massey. We've got 2 times per person. So anyone else like to discussion that has not used up their time on the floor? It's been motioned and properly seconded.
I have a comment, Mayor.
I'll give you latitude on that, yeah.
Okay, so I'd just like to point out that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen get their packets on Wednesday or Thursday. I was out of town, so I got mine on Friday. There wasn't a lot of time to ask Mr. Walensky these questions. However, I serve on the Personnel Advisory Commission with Mr. Walensky, and I did ask some of these questions, but only I knew the answer to those questions. The public didn't know the answer to those questions, and the public deserves to hear these questions and these answers, because ultimately, I am your representative. I work for the public. I ask the questions on your behalf. For me to hold that knowledge behind a closed door is not fair to the public. It's not right. It is unrepresentative, and it's not fair.
Mr. Massey, thank you. You made your point.
Mayor,
Vice Mayor, quickly.
simply a comment to that effect. I think that the questions that we ask our staff in a setting that is in their office where they have their facts and their figures at the ready, it prepares us for this meeting before the public, where we are here with our peers, with our citizens, whether they're viewing on television, where they can pull it up later, or whether or not they're sitting here in the pews of the chambers. And so, as far as a process that I think works for the betterment of a policy, especially if you have knowledge specific to an industry, and you know those questions to ask, I think it's incumbent to, again, come where we can then come to a body prepared. And so if those questions are asked before 7:20 on a night that we vote, it is my, in all due respect, suggestion that we be prepared prior to walking into these chambers.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
We have to get the presentation, Mayor, before the meeting in order to ask our questions. We didn't have the slideshow.
We've had discussion on this. There's been properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Abstain.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
I vote yes only because of the time frame involved.
The motion carries, and I'll just conclude, just for the sake of the public, that we've had this process in place 40 years or so. When I first served on this board, your packet was delivered to your house. Now it's electronically delivered to you. So the process works. Next item on the agenda, item number 13. That would be, 12. Item number 12, purchase agreement, group life and long-term disability. Mr. Walensky.
Okay, Mayor and Board, the purpose of this agenda item is to consider approval of a new group life insurance policy and a long-term disability insurance policy for a 2-year term beginning January 1, 2018 and ending on December 31, 2019. Life insurance currently covers all full-time employees and elected officials while serving in office and amounts to 3 times annual earnings up to a maximum of $300,000. Accidental death and dismemberment insurance provides the same coverage to the same group of employees. A basic life insurance policy benefit of $15,000 covers eligible employees who retired after August 2000. These policies do not include temporary and seasonal employees with the city. They are not eligible. Long-term disability insurance provides financial protection for full-time employees by paying 66 2/3 of monthly earnings up to a maximum of $6,000 per month. An employee is eligible for long-term disability, also called LTD, benefits starting on the 91st day of their illness or disability, or after 12 weeks of family medical leave, which is also known as FMLA. I know in the medical field we're big on acronyms. To be eligible, an employee must remain unable to perform every duty of their occupation with the city and must be under the regular care of a licensed physician. The entire policy, this policy I'm referring to, is available in the Human Resources section of the city website, and anyone, anywhere, can access it on a 24/7, 365 basis. This agenda item supports Germantown Forward 2030 City Services and Finance Strategic Objective Number 4. The city provides high-quality services, takes pride in its technically competent workforce, and is dedicated to serving customers. And Strategic Objective Number 5, the city will provide services that are responsive to customer needs. Again, I'll invite Ms. Pieford to describe the bid process, and Ms. Spradley will then make a brief presentation about her analysis and recommendation for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky. Again, staff prepared the bid with assistance from the city's consultant, ESPL LC. We issued the bid on 11/6 and with a questions deadline of 12/20, 2 weeks worth of questions. The bid was advertised as well on the city's website and sent to over 1,200 e-notice subscribers, as well as the last year's previous bidders. 15 vendors requested information. The city received 5 bids by the deadline to submit, which was 11/28/17. Procurement staff reviewed these bids to ensure that the bid requirements were met and if there were any exceptions or any conditions that were listed. Of the 5 bids submitted, only Fowler Insurance with US Able and Lincoln Financial met all the requirements, bid requirements guaranteeing the rate for 2 years, as well as taking no exceptions. In the analysis, you will see that Symetra Life, and Ms. Spradling will explain further, Symetra Life was low in price, but provided exception language that allowed for changes by Symetra in the policy after the bid date, which would disqualify them. You can't change the bid once it's submitted. The bid would negate the firm price guarantee, which does not meet the bid requirement. All this information was compiled by the procurement staff and sent to the city's consultant, ESP, to review. Attached to the agenda sheet is the analysis, and Ms. Spradling will go over the analysis for you. Thank you.
All right. Just some highlights on the long-term disability. I want to talk about LTD first, and then we'll switch to life because they are 2 different products. For long-term disability, I'm just bringing up the head count range. The bidders, it ranged between 400 and 408, but the reason I'm pointing that out is because they do not base their rate on head counts. The annual costs are calculated based on your total monthly payroll rated. The total monthly payroll rated is based on the census payroll that was provided when the bid was released. And that can change just based on hires, fires, terminations, whatever happens in the staff. The recommended contract benefits through Lincoln Financial are no different to the current. They're essentially a renewal of the current product. The LTD rate is currently 0.370 per 100 monthly covered payroll. The current annual LTD premium is $84,102.12. The proposed rate is 0.380 per $100 monthly covered payroll. The premium increase of 0.010 per 100 monthly covered payroll. And the estimated total annual premium, which is an increase of $2,273, is $86,375.16. Now moving on to life, I have just 2 slides for life. One's about active employees. The other one is regarding retirees because it is 2 different policies because your retirees have a basic $15,000 benefit and your active are paid out, as Ms. Piefer already discussed, 3 times their salary. So the annual costs for a life policy are actually based on your volume. Life insurance volume is based on that same census payroll that was provided at the time of the bid and also can change for the same factors mentioned before. The recommended contract is essentially a renewal of the current plan through USAble Life, and there are no differences in the benefits. The life rate is currently 0.132 per 1,000, with the AD&D rate at 0.030 per 1,000. The proposed is 0.132 per 1,000 for life, and the AD&D rate is down 0.010 for a total of 0.020 per 1,000. So the estimated total annual premium is $123,595. And then regarding the retirees, there's no AD&D because they do not currently work for you. So those annual costs, though, are based on the volume that's provided, which is based on that 15,000 benefit, and it just changes based on your retiree counts. The recommended contract is, again, it's a renewal of the current policy that's through USAble. There's no change in that rate. It is 0.132 per 1,000. The estimated total annual premium is $2,684.88 for the retirees.
Thank you. Does that conclude the presentation by staff and consultant? Thank you. Is there a motion to authorize the mayor and board to approve a new policy for the City of Germantown's group life insurance in the annual amount of $123,595.52 with USA Able Life Insurance Company and long-term disability in the annual amount of $86,375.16 with Lincoln Financial Group for the period of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019, and enter into a consulting agreement with Fowler Insurance and Employee Benefits, Inc. for the placement and handling of group life and long-term disability insurance coverage for 24 months beginning January 1st, 2018 and ending on December 31st, 2019 with an additional 12-month extension at the city's option. It's a motion. Is there a motion to accept that?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any questions for staff or discussion? Alderman Massey.
So I understand the life and disability generally go with the medical, and so I'll be voting in favor of leaving that with you guys, and the bidding process generally isn't quite as complicated. Are you not handling that? Are you not handling the life and disability?
No, they're not. There are consultants to analyze the bids. Mr. Fowler and his agency will be handling the administration of the contract and working with my staff on a case-by-case basis as issues come up.
Is that something we changed this year?
No.
I'm sorry, I've lost track of some of the.
That's a continuation of what we do now.
Okay, I'm sorry that I misunderstood the relationship there. So when you're doing your presentation, is everything that you presented tonight included in our packets? Yes. All of your comments, everything that you said, all the notes from up there are? Your PowerPoint? Yes. For the medical and the life? Because there's one slide that I'm not sure that I saw. I think Alderman Barziza might have asked about.
PowerPoint is not incorporated into the packet. However, the long spreadsheet, if you fold that out, that was essentially the information that was provided. It's up here on the slide, but in a condensed version on the PowerPoint. But exactly everything that they went over is included in this spreadsheet once you pull it out.
Well, one of the things I'm trying to point out, though, is as we're going through these presentations, questions arise that we could not have asked without being clairvoyant as to what might come up from staff during these presentations. So one of the reasons to wait until the public meetings is to see what staff actually presents, so there's no duplication of the conversations and questions. Thank you.
But just to clarify, that is not the case here. What what Ms. Bradley went over is exactly what's contained in your packet.
This is a form of an executive summary, in essence, to help the public understand it better and to help the board understand it better. Not everyone has the depth of knowledge of the industry to be able to read through everything. So this is a tool to assist. That's the way I interpret it as. Continue with questions. You have the floor.
Oh, I think that's it.
Any other questions for staff? It's been properly motioned and second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Motion carries. We move to item number 13 on the agenda this evening, public hearing, Resolution 17R26, amendment to the outline plan of the Forest Hill Heights amended plan development. Mr. Ross.
You can bear with me for just a second. Thank you for your patience. First item, 13, is to approve an amendment to the outline plan for the Forest Hill Heights amended plan development as recommended by the Planning Commission. So this is the outline plan that was approved by the Planning Commission. This site is within the boundaries of the Forest Hill Heights amended outline plan development, which is a large 363-acre parcel that was first recorded by Memphis and Shelby County in 1996. 278 acres of the property within the PD was annexed by the city of Germantown in 2000, at which time it was zoned agriculture by that same area was zoned agriculture by Shelby County. So in 2000, the majority of the annexed property was zoned into office and commercial uses, and the portion of which was zoned commercial was 18.5 acres at the corner. Accordingly, as we move on in history, the outline plan added a number of supplemental conditions as part of that annexation. And then in 2015 and 2016, the city undertook a small area plan for this particular area of Forest Hill Heights that resulted in April of 2016 adoption of the plan, and in May of 2016, after 3 readings, adoption of Ordinance 2016-9, which applied the zoning that you see to the area. The area that I'm referring to is just this area here, not the other areas. So I want to make sure that what we're looking at is that specific. The particular amendment, though, tonight is to add the T5 uses into the planned developments allowed uses. So the T5 on this use table is this highlighted column here and here. Those uses are apartment buildings, row houses, duplexes, side yard houses. Cottages and houses are not included, single-family homes. But you have live-work units, you've got lodging opportunities with hotels, inns, you have different office types, different retail types, all building on the outline of the small area plan. So in accordance with our process, 23-574 with the outline plan amendments, we're bringing forward, as well as a public hearing tonight, the amendment to the outline plan that would include the addition of these T5 uses. And then, as we discussed in executive session, the deletion of some language on the approved plat that was provided as attachment 2 to remove the words multifamily through accept, so that the approved plat would only read Phase 19 watermark at Forest Hill Heights shall be allowed to have 17.5 dwelling units per acre. With that, staff concludes our presentation and open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I will just use this time as our attorney is preparing the motion for this evening. And Mr. Harris, as you write that, I'll just go ahead and ask you to read it. And then why don't you probably can read your handwriting better than I can.
Thank you. Yes, members of the board, if you were to look at the what's called Exhibit Attachment 2 to your packet, which is the outline plan recorded document, in the midst of that, at what is triangle number 3, number 2, the deletion of the words that Mr. Ross referred to will result in a motion that will be as follows. The motion should be to approve Resolution 17R26, an amendment to the outline plan for the Forest Hill Heights amended plan development, including a revision to the plat, deleting the words, quote, multifamily residential shall be limited to a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre, comma, except. So those are the words that are coming out.
Thank you. Is there a call to put that in the form of a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
So motion and a second. The item has been properly motioned and seconded. This evening, we have the opportunity for a public hearing on this particular item. At this time, I will open a public hearing for anyone who would like to come forward and speak to this particular item. Before I ask for people to come to the podium, I'd just like to read our citizens to be heard is the same as a public hearing. We have certain ground rules and guidelines during the time of a public hearing. The public hearing is intended to design to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected to the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. While this may not apply in a public hearing, I think the message is one of decorum when presenting to the board. Is there anyone who would like to come forward during this public hearing? Come forth and do so now. State your name, address, with zip code for the public record, and you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir. Joseph Garaffa, G-A-R-A-F-F as in Frank A. I live at 9440 Forestwood Road, Germantown. I'm a little confused as to what's going on here. Now, this is the area which, and I'd like it explained to me, it'll, maybe I'm just thick, but this is the area that's south of Winchester, and it's being rezoned. It's being what?
Sir, just go ahead and make your state your questions, and then a board member can ask on your behalf.
What will be the uses in this area, and are there any hard proposals for use in that area as of now?
Okay. And does that conclude your comments?
That's my question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garaffa. Who would like to come forward? Anyone else would like to come forward and speak to the board on this particular item? Please do so now. Come forward and state your name, address, and zip code for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I think you all know me, but my name is Edgar Babian. I'm the president of the Winchester Forest Hill Estates Homeowner Association. I live at 3580 Crestwind, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. I live just north of this development. My predecessors with the Winchester Forest Hill Estates Homeowner Association have been working with the property owners on this property since 1989. I've got documents in here going back to that period of time. Originally, it was zoned for residential in '89, and then they changed it after numerous conversations with us and other people in the area to make it commercial, our office. And the reason for the office was to keep houses and apartments coming in. Apartments are really good for the first 7 to 10 years. But after 7 to 10 years, 15 years on the tops, they start becoming a blight, okay? Now, we've got apartments going in this entire area down here. Right now, we're up about 800, okay? Well, that's great right now, but in 15 years, it is going to be a blight on our school system, okay? Apartments, when they turn south, it's a big problem. And we fought with them, or not fought, we negotiated with them, and they were all for this, all commercial. Now, one of the reasons the commercial hasn't sold is because everybody thinks this is in Memphis. It's Memphis, Tennessee, 38125. Now, why would you want to build a commercial thing in Memphis when you can go to Germantown or Collierville and build something? I was watching a show on TV for one of the guys that has an office down here. It was on a Memphis business channel, and he was so proud of his $51 million a year business that he had in Germantown, or had in Memphis. This program went for 30 minutes. He never once said anything about Germantown because he was renting the place he was in. He was doing $51 million on a self-made company. We're probably not getting any taxes off of it, but he didn't know he lived or he had a business in Germantown. Well, how can Germantown push something when it's Memphis, even though it is Germantown? But, I mean, we have the Memphis Better Business Bureau in Germantown. That's something to be proud of, Memphis Better Business Bureau in Germantown. But like I said, we worked over the years.
You have 30 seconds, sir.
We worked over the years to keep the commercial or the residential out of there because on weekends, it's quieter when you have businesses. Nobody's there, but we've done a lot of changes and hopefully just keep it zoned the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Babian. Who else would like to come forward and speak to the board on this particular matter? Anyone else? Please come forward and state your name, address, and zip code for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Been sitting down too long, a little unstable. Mayor Palazzolo, Vice Mayor Gibson, I'm Phil Connor. We live at 3664 Crestwind Drive, which is just north of the area. You're aware, and you've heard from us many times about trying to restrict high-density projects in our area. We continue to want to do that, and we're absolutely against any apartments. I do want to tell anybody that might be with the Watermark tonight that might be here for this hearing that what we have to say is not against any one of you. It's against what you bring to the table. And I also want to thank two people here tonight, Alderman Massey, Alderman Barzizza, for their efforts in helping support us in the restricting of high-density projects in our area. We live on acre or more lots north of there, and we participated for the last couple of years in the proposals about this area. And we were in favor of many of the proposals, but not the apartments. Now, the mayor has brought forth a proposal to a moratorium, a temporary moratorium on apartments. However, there's many exclusions that it really does not much restrict what might be done in this area. It really only restricts standalone projects, and that is only temporary. I'm going to ask you tonight to honor us, honor the residents of the area, many of whom, we've been there 10 years, but most of our neighbors have been there well over 30 years, some 40 years. Most built those homes. And we come from other areas of the town that we have seen firsthand what apartments do to an area, and we've never seen anything beneficial. We see areas, as Mr. Babian said, after some years, the areas start to decline. Our investment in homes starts to decline, and we expect the same thing here. Not in the first few years, but I have been a realtor and a broker for 43 years, and I have yet to have someone ask me to help them find a home near an apartment complex. It just does not happen. So our investment of our homes is destined to go down, and at the profit of maybe absentee owners of some apartment. Now, we're not against development in that area. There's many things. That area is special. Our area is special. Germantown is special. But we do believe that
approximately
there are
30
many
seconds.
things that could be beneficial to the area, much more so, more complementary to the area than apartments. So we just asked you simply tonight to honor us by rejecting this proposal. Let's bring something better to the table, something more complementary to the table, but reject this tonight. See if these people will come back with something else. So if you would honor us by rejecting this tonight, then we can continue to honor you by asking that you continue as our public servants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak on this particular item? If you could come and state your name and address with zip code for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Carmi Spillers, and I live at 9279 Cielo Drive, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. We live right across the way. We're at the Vinings. And we have been very much involved in this, and we were very much in, not in opposition. We would love to not see it there, but at the same time, we have worked with the folks to see what this is going to do. But the density has increased tremendously. This was not what we talked about. This was not the curb cuts or the things that we were told were coming. So it's totally different from what we saw before. And we really would appreciate you going back to look at what was presented in the front end and not add in all these apartments in here. That we know that we are going to be it's going to be a definite reflection on our group. And we're small homeowners. We appreciate what we have. We really spend time making sure that we have a great facility there. But knowing what's going to come across the street, we're not looking forward to it. And if anything, we're going to vote to make changes. So just letting you know, we want to be part of Germantown. We appreciate Germantown. We moved here for a reason. We put our money here. We vote, and we want to do the right things, but we need you to do the right things for us too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak on this particular item? Anyone else in the audience who'd like to come forward? Seeing no one come forward, that concludes the public hearing on this particular item. We have a motion. It's been seconded. Now we can entertain any staff questions or comments. Vice Mayor?
I do have a question, Mayor. As far as the number 800 multifamily units for Watermark and the Viridian project, I know that's not what we're talking about this evening. However, 310 for Watermark, is that correct?
That's correct.
And 300 for the other project?
Viridian at this point is 12 units to the acre as a concept,
Okay.
as part of their outline plan, but they haven't brought forward any sort of site plan layout, so they are in the conceptual phase of the development. So it's up to 12 units to the acre over 25 acres, which could result in 300 units.
So that would be the maximum. So math simple, 610 units, not 800, is that correct?
Yes.
I just want to be clear on that. And I know Mr. Graffa had asked some questions that, again, we're playing catch up a little bit, but if you could speak to those uses just so we can hear that.
So, as discussed, the zoning is already in place. The zoning was approved in 2016. What is before you tonight is part of the process in the ordinance in the plan development chapter 23574. It's amendment to an outline plan. As a plan development is approved, and this one has been around in various forms since 1996 prior to annexation. But as a plan development is put together, its own uses, rules, and regulations are recorded, approved and then recorded as part of the plat. This is essentially a plat amendment, as you can see from attachment number 2, a note on the plat moving forward for this particular plan development to allow all of these uses that are provided within the smart code area for T5 highlighted here in red, that are readily available on the city's website within the smart code regulations to go forward in this Forest Hill Heights area of 278 acres. And then there's a specific number 2 section to the plat amendment that would apply just to phase 19, which is the watermark development, stating a maximum of 17.5 dwelling units to the acre, which results in the 310 units that the Planning Commission approved on November 7th.
Last question, Mayor, if I could. As far as the small area plan for Forest Hill Heights, we're at 610, again, maximum if we include the Viridian project. The number for that small area plan, I remember it was in the 500 range, correct?
So as we discussed at the Planning Commission, the economic impact consultant that the city used as part of the small area plan process looked at a snapshot of what was happening in late 2015 and made some predictions, and their predictions were such that 500 units of either for sale or for rent multifamily products with a shared wall, so not a single family house, could be live work, attached single family or multifamily for rent for sale. But up to 500 to 600 units in the first 5 to 10 years with a maximum build out of anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 units over the life of this full concept plan that was approved as part of the plan. Now, this plan is just in concept, but I want to touch quickly on the development plan and the outline plan and how it syncs up with the uses that we're talking about. The plan was laid out so that there's a center, we'll call it a center of mass of residential that happens, and these other uses, the office, the commercial, the mix of uses, the hotel, these other things radiate off of that. But the rooftops, in theory, have to come before any of that other stuff can come. The offices have developed down there. The area is home to ThyssenKrupp Elevators, North American corporate headquarters, to Crew Training International, to a couple FedEx offices, to a variety of other uses that have already been mentioned. But it doesn't have any area for people to live near where they work. And the commercial can start to balance out with those mix of uses when you don't just have a single office. It's a long way of getting back to your number there, but it's about trying to kickstart it with some rooftops, and this 310 units that was approved as part of Planning Commission on November 7th, and the warrants are the next item on your agenda if you approve this, or will be the first development to come out of the Forest Hill Heights small area plan.
So I appreciate those answers, Mr. Ross. I know we spent quite some time last week together, and we were very thorough. I appreciate that time. My last question is for Assistant Chief Bright. I know that there was a conversation about what a multifamily looks like as far as crime, and I know that we had some correspondence back and forth today. Could you go into simply how the Germantown Police Department, our second safest city within the state of Tennessee, how you're going to be looking at that multi-use development?
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. I would just say that we've looked at that area since before annexation and made plans ahead of time. And we are proud of the fact that we are a very safe community, so we take that very, very personal and serious, and feel that anyone in our jurisdiction is safe. As that area grows, just as other areas have grown around the city, we would certainly plan ahead for that growth and decide what kind of resources and how they would need to be used in that area, whether it's modifying our districts, as we recently did for the Central Business District. We understand with the growth and density all over the city comes different challenges, and we
we normally work with the board and plan ahead with our resources.
Thank you. And so that reallocation of resources was exactly whether it's through the district, maybe a standalone district even. We'll have that opportunity to have many conversations about that.
Absolutely. I mean, looking in the future, that certainly could be how we address the areas, is having officers assigned to a smaller area than we do now out there, although they do spend most of their time south of the railroad tracks. But with that, with the school and the growth, and we would certainly probably look to make the northern boundary actually the railroad tracks. And we like to try to be innovative and creative and see what that would look like. We certainly want to have a presence, and we would.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor, you used about 8 minutes of your 10 minutes if you're scoring at home. Any other questions for staff? Alderman Barzizza.
Yeah, my question is basically in regards to the wants and needs of the people. And there's been several people that spoke here tonight and have got letters or emails or phone calls from God knows how many people over the last several weeks since the last BMA to just reinforce the fact that they don't want apartments. And my question is not, there's not a question, it's basically a statement in that regard. And I will hold to that for the citizens of the community, because that's what they want. They do not want apartments very close to their homes. And I think it's, we've got some issues already with some apartment complexes that were built way back in time that Chief Bright can address if he so desires, about the amount of crime that takes place over there and the rumor that I've been hearing about what might happen to that property. But that's neither here nor there for right now. But the people here have spoken tonight. The people have sent each of us emails and communicated with you as best they could, and they don't want it. My fellow aldermen, this is something that we need to address. We need to be more open to the needs of the people as opposed to what the commercial needs. I mean, it's in my honest opinion, we're making a terrible mistake by taking something that was just a number of years ago when Mayor Goldsworthy really liked the fact that we had a bedroom community, a very safe bedroom community, and people lived out here, wanted to live out here. They had their children going to school out here. We've got great schools, but I also fear that with additional apartments, 600 and whatever number of apartments we're talking about, we're also looking at in the neighborhood of about 250 kids that will be going to school. And so we're already in a crowded situation. The new school that will be built just up the way will be crowded almost immediately. So I say all this in behalf of the people here tonight and the people who have communicated with me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions, comments? Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand a lot of the concerns that folks have and about multifamily in general. I've heard from some residents. Typically, we hear from residents just about when any development comes along, but there's never, what my point is, there's never been a development in Germantown that has not been without some form of controversy, whether that be Saddle Creek, whether that be Methodist Germantown Hospital, whether that be the village shops. The term that we sometimes use, and I don't mean this derogatory in any fashion, is NIMBY. It's not in my backyard. I don't want apartments in my backyard. But what I'm trying to say is that over the past 20 years, and I think I'm writing this, and I'll look to Mr. Ross, is we have in Germantown approved final approval, given final approval, that is, for 2 apartment projects. And I just don't believe that is overly burdensome on our community. I know some of you will disagree with me. and that's okay. But in all matters of development within our city, we strive to be systematic. We're process-driven, and we follow a plan. And whether that's our comprehensive 2030 plan, whether that is our land use plan, or in this case, whether this is our small area plan, the Forest Hill Heights Small Area Plan. And we went through the small area plan process, what has it been, 12, 18 months ago, where we discussed at length the location in Forest Hill Heights where multifamily was proposed. And it was exactly as Mr. Ross displayed. There has been multifamily planned here. It just so happens that this is the first project that we're getting within the Forest Hill Heights out of the gate. And I'm not extremely happy about that, but I do believe that density is not a bad thing and that having some multifamily in here is necessary to create a vibrant, walkable community that we want, that is going to have neighborhood services where people can get their community coffee or their dry cleaning and live in close proximity to that and walk to that. As I said, in the 40 years that I've lived here and the 10 years I worked here, I've never seen a development that was without controversy. And I think that Germantown is where we are today based on leaders who have had the strength to follow a plan against controversy. This is not easy for me to go against maybe the wishes of a few, but I'm following a plan that we gain public consent on, and I know as a land use planner by trade that if we follow a plan, we get desired outcomes. And that's what I believe we're going to do. I think we're going to create this vibrant, this walkable, this safe community in this area that we'll be proud of and that the residents will be proud of. I guess that's, I'll close with that.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other? Alderman Yonda.
I'd just like to reiterate what Owen said. Even the Vinings was fought, that development. Virtually every development that I'm aware of has had some people that have opposition. I've only received 6 emails. That's not a lot in this size of community against apartments. I'm sure that the people who live in our apartments in our community feel like they're second-class citizens by the way we've been talking. I don't believe that's the way it is with the communities that we have right now. I think this watermark is it's going to be a great asset to our community. But I do have one question. Has there been a decrease or an increase in the density of this? I thought.
So as it was laid out in the small area plan, and this is the document itself, as it was laid out in the plan on, let me get back to this. On this side of the road, in this area right here, it was indicated that there could be, as a concept, approximately 225 units. And then on the other side of the new road that could be built in this area right here, there could be 300. You know, they basically just flipped the numbers, but it's not getting outside of the conceptual land use plan that was part of this approved plan. And it's still within the residential quarter that was indicated on the plan itself. If I may, Mayor, I'd like to point the board's attention to page 44 of attachment 5. Alderman Barziza brought up 250 kids as being brought in as part of some of this development. It was discussed at Planning Commission, how many kids are generally calculated as part of multifamily developments. And if you start at the bottom of page 43, Ms. Tuttle, who's in the audience tonight with Watermark Thompson Thrift, indicated that they had done a study in the Denver, Colorado Springs area, which indicated an overall student count of 0.18, and that's K through 12, so that's 0.18 student per unit in the Denver submarket of Colorado Springs, which is Colorado's second fastest growing city. If you look at elementary specific, because we asked Ms. Tuttle to follow up with the specific numbers, elementary specific is 0.10, middle school is 0.05, and high school is 0.04 students per unit. So it breaks down to approximately 31 students per unit, or 60 students per unit if you start to, or per development, this 310 development, if you start to look at it that way.
And I'd like to add on that, you know, the things that were fought the hardest, like Solana and that property, it's turned out to be a great property. The things that the neighborhood of which my daughter belonged to, that they brought up, never have come to pass. And I think it's important that we remember all the successes that we've had, even though we've had people in opposition. And I think Alderman Owens is correct. It takes leadership to see what can be and not what you think it's going to be. And I'm for this. I think it's a great project, and I plan on voting for it. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions or comments for staff? Oh, 1 second. We've gone through the entire round except for Alderman Massey. Would you like the floor?
Yes, thank you.
Alderman Massey.
So I'd just like to clarify, I think, what Mr. Garofalo meant when he said that there might be 900, 800 units. He was probably contemplating that the park would still be online, and as of right now, that's been withdrawn, but that would have placed 910 apartment units in one particular area of our city. It's not spread out across the city, and that's really what's aggravating to these folks, is that we have such dense development in one area. So I think when he said that, he probably was still talking about that park apartment complex, and there's no guarantee that that won't eventually be built. But even with 600 units, I think that it's still too great a number. Cameron, the thing that bothers me, and I made some notes here, is that, and it's the same thing that bothers me. You know, when we purchased our properties, we purchased them with a vision of raising our families in single-family neighborhoods with other families that shared the same vision. That's why I purchased my property where I did. I moved to Germantown so that I would be around families who wanted that single-family home feel. I just think that the city has betrayed that vision. You know, we came in with smart growth and started making all these changes that no resident could have reasonably foreseen. And you know as a planner that when residents buy a piece of property, there is a certain agreement with the city based on the zoning ordinances that we won't just pull the rug out from under them and change those zoning ordinances arbitrarily. That's why spot zoning is against the law, right? So in this case, it just feels like the city used the cover of smart growth to basically implement some sort of spot zoning around these neighborhoods, because the reality is that under the old zoning, these types of developments never would have been allowed. And so we've taken away the protection that at one time the city guaranteed our residents. And now they're left with their entire world turned upside down because their vision has been changed. And they should have been allowed to raise their families, retire in those homes, with the understanding that the city was going to honor those agreements that they made with them as they pertain to the zoning for that area. So renaming the zoning smart code and then changing everything and allowing for apartments rather than office, I think is unfair to those residents. And again, I just don't think it was foreseeable for them. And based on that, I would like to make a motion to postpone this vote tonight and have the board vote to allow outside counsel to conduct a formal examination and inquiry into whether or not the smart code and resulting amendments were legally approved. The citizens of Germantown would like to see a rigorous investigation without speculation.
Alderman Massey, or was that
That's my motion.
Okay. The motion is to postpone. Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails. We're back to discussion. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to what the school board's got to address and what the school board will have to address, or what the school board will have to address later on, and we will have to address as a body later on. One of the things that, and I'm very close with several of the private schools because my grandsons are all in private schools in Memphis because they all reside in Memphis. None of them live out here. And invariably, every one of the schools has had a reduced number of students that are going to these schools who are living in Germantown. These kids are coming to Germantown. I met a lady who was living in Bartlett, who moved from her two children from St. Anne's in Bartlett out here and spent what would have been tuition money on rehabbing her house. And because of the school situation. The Christian Brothers High School I'm very close with. They are at a dilemma with some of the students that have left. They have, the lower classes are okay, but they lost a lot of juniors and seniors. St. George's in Collierville, as well as the St. George's here in Germantown, has lost student population, and they're all going to Germantown or Collierville schools, and which is a win, I guess, in a way, but it just adds to the dilemma that we will have further down the road. Our new school will be full in no time. We will never get out of the temporary buildings, and so unless we have another bond issue and build another school and try to figure out where we're going to put it and so on and so forth. Apartments is going to complicate the matter. Again, as I said, the people don't want it, not in your backyard, but where Rocky's living, had they built apartments, would you have bought that house that you're in? I mean, so we got to look at not in your backyard. I can understand not in your backyard. And it's, I've had conversations with Bo Mills in regards to a water tower back a couple of years ago in East Germantown. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wants towers for our cell phone issues out here in their backyard. And I understand, they don't want it in their backyard, but they want to protect their property values. And these folks are our constituents. They're the people who we work for. We don't work for us group. I don't work for anybody here but the people who are watching TV, the citizens of Germantown. So we need to pay homage and listen to these people because they're not being heard. They're not being listened to. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? Staff comments? Or Alderman Massey?
So, Chairman, this is really more for the public's benefit than it is for ours. But some of the issues that I've raised in the past about some of these smart growth developments is the fact that the city held exclusive meetings with developers, and then.
What is your point of order, Alderman?
It's not germane to the discussion.
It's very germane to the discussion.
Alderman Massey, you would need to support that with some type of proof or whatnot. That's hearsay. That's innuendo. That's not something that's based on.
Well, I can get to that if you give me a minute. But let me just say
you're on the clock right now.
Well, that's fine. But it needs to be known that Alderman Owens lobbies for these very apartment complexes throughout
Alderman Massey,
the country.
now,
So
you're out of order.
Well, there needs to be a question of whether or not there is some self-interest and motivation when he's bringing these issues to my attention.
Alderman Massey, when our board, and you've done it before yourself, self-discloses whether they have an interest in anything. So
absolutely, I'll be happy to self-disclose. I'll be voting on this because there is no conflict whatsoever, and for you to suggest that is irresponsible and out of line.
I didn't say you had a relationship with these apartments, but you do lobby for other apartment complexes.
I work as a land use planner, sir. You are out of order.
Yes,
Mayor.
you are. Please continue or conclude your comments.
I got to tell you, Mayor, I'm sorry. I'm tired of his accusations to the board on Facebook, social media, and here now concerning the members of the Aldermen. Either have some proof or get out. Okay? Get some proof. I'm tired of these accusations. I'm sorry.
Alderman,
I'm sorry. I'm out of order.
Alderman, we asked our residents to have good decorum when they addressed us. Let's have good decorum among each other and to the audience that's here tonight. We've had a motion that's been properly seconded. We've had comments this evening, and we've had 2 rounds each by multiple aldermen. Please call the roll.
No, Mayor, I'm not done with explaining why this is germane to the conversation.
Yeah, I apologize.
Okay.
Make it quick. You've got about 3 minutes left of your time.
So all of this should be considered when we're making the votes on this. It should have been considered when we determined whether or not we were going to postpone this vote tonight. You know, when we're voting, it's become an issue where we're voting for the benefit of the developers, and the developers were the ones that pushed these amendments and the zoning changes to begin with. I've got the minutes, I can show that. I see Alderman Gibson shaking her head, but I've got the documents to show that. So I mean, it's not something that can't be proved. I'll be glad to prove it. The board led the public to believe that many of the changes were minor and were intended to only correct grammar errors, and it turns out that there were substantial changes.
Alderman Massey, what are you talking about now? I mean, how are you germane to this particular item that's before us this evening?
Well,
you're rambling.
I'm not rambling. This is very germane.
As chair, your remarks are now concluded.
No, you just don't want to hear the remarks.
But let me tell you what, you are out of order as chair of this body. I can declare that. Discussion has occurred. It's been properly motioned and second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
The motion carries, and just as an aside, there are some fine people who live in the Vineyards apartment next door to the Vineyards homes, and there's some fine people that will live in some apartments next to Somerset that are next door to each other. Let's take a 3-minute break, recess. A lot of us have been here now for going on 3 hours, and we'll reconvene right at 8:20. Folks, if we could go ahead and take our seats and come back to work, so to speak. Let's go ahead and get reconvened here in a moment. So if we can take our seats and get reconvened. This reminds me of the 80s when we go to a midnight.
I don't know, I'm okay.
Our clerk and deputy clerk do not want that. Is that correct? All right, all kidding aside, welcome back to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting.
Good, Tony, thank you.
And we are reconvened from a very short recess. That brings us to item number 14 on the agenda this evening, approval of warrants, Forest Hill Heights amended PUD, PD, Phase 19, final plan, watermark. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This item is to consider 7 warrants that are associated with the final plan for the Forest Hill Heights amended PD, Phase 19 watermark. This property is within the T5 Urban Center District, and these warrants are deviations from the requirements of the Smart Growth District and must be approved by both the Planning Commission as well as the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We've already discussed this area in the background significantly, so I'll save us some time. But this is the area that we're looking at, highlighted in red, zeroing in on where it fits in with the concept plan. And then the site in this center of multifamily within the land use plan. So the revised final site plan that was approved by the board, the Planning Commission at their meeting on November 7th is in front of you on the screen. The 7 warrants that are associated with it resulted over the course of 17.7 acres with 310 units, having 3-story max with 546 total parking spaces divided up between garages, on-site surface parking, so within the development, and then on-street parking. So the final plan that you're looking at right now, including the building elevations, complies with the site and development requirements of the T5 district, with the exception of the warrants that we're about to step through. Per section 23745, warrants of the Smart Code, any requested deviation from the Smart Code's regulation must be granted as approval of a warrant. These warrants that we're discussing tonight are go against the design recommendations, but not always in the negative. Some of these warrants are designed to enhance the property. Other warrants are dictated because of topographic, demographic, any sort of other site conditions. However, in determining justifiable reasons for granting a warrant, the Planning Commission, as well as the BMA, shall take into account other relevant factors, and this is directly from the code, that may be applicable: the relationship of the property to other properties, whether the deviation would be in accord with the intent of the Smart Code, principles of good land use planning as those may evolve over time, the topography of the property, peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties, undue hardships to the owner of the property, and in determining whether to grant a warrant, financial hardship similar to a variance shall not alone be considered sufficient to justify a deviation. In all events, the Planning Commission shall take into consideration whether the proposed deviation may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the Smart Code provisions. And I'd like to add, as well as remaining true to the design and intent of the small area plan, that is a community-driven process that has taken into account voices from around the community, Germantown, as well as those direct neighbors. So let's start stepping through these warrants. There are 7 of them. I'm going to start with warrant number 1 related to civic space. It's 23758. Warrant number 1, warrant number 2, and warrant number 3 are connected in a little bit, because warrant number 1 requires the approval of civic space as a warrant. It's a recognition that this will be space that's provided for the greater good, for space that can be accessed by the public, but a recognition that the property owner will be taking operation and maintenance control of this space. So the civic spaces that are part of this is this area here, this small parklet, pocket park here, a third pocket park along this drive road that'll be cut all the way up from Crestwyn to Winchester, and then a fourth area, which is the dog park. Warrant number 2 focuses more on the placement of this building relative to the placement of the dog park. Moving this building back 68 feet from this roadway right here allows for the creation of this community gathering space, but that also requires a warrant. Warrant number 3 is related to the frontage build-out. The code requires, as you can kind of make out by these yellow lines on the plan, the code requires for all screen walls and other street screens to be lined up with the front building line, the front facade of the building. What the developers have proposed are these streetscape plazas that result in pushing the building screens back away from the street, but it opens these spaces up to the public as well as the residents to gather in these areas, but still provides coverage for the development as a whole by having these screen walls as required by the code. So the warrant request is really to move that required screen wall further back from the facades to hardscape these areas and create community gathering spaces within the development. So I've touched on all of those, the different pocket parks and the offset street screen pattern. Warrant number 4 is facade treatment for less than 30% transparency for the residential structures. Each of the buildings that they have, Each of the buildings that they have different types of materials and transparencies associated with them, but their request applies only to these 4 buildings. This 5th building is their clubhouse building, and it's been designed to really dovetail into the commercial mixed-use center of the plan. It'll have a colonnade on the bottom that's a commercial type of setup where they'll have their leasing office and their community gym for the apartment multifamily project that will allow for that street-facing activity, which serves to activate the sidewalks in the areas and to encourage further business development as you go up into the site. But the warrant is more for those residential structures for that particular area. Warrant number 5 gets into the building materials and the facade treatments, and their request was to allow fiber cement siding, so cement hardy board and ephes rather than stucco. And the intent here was that stucco, while an approved material under the code, isn't necessarily a good material for this geographic area of Memphis. And the cement hardy board, as well as other ephes materials, weather better, offer less issues with people moving in and out, whether it's an apartment for rent or a condo for sale. People are going to move in and out of buildings, and so a couch leg may hit the side of the building. Ephes and cement fiberboard bounce back better than stucco. Warrant number 6 is for driveway entrances. The code requires a greater than 30 or less than 30 feet and less than 24 feet, depending on whether it's a major frontage or a residential frontage. And in these areas, these 2 areas, the drives are at 37.5 feet to accommodate the fire department's request, as well as in and out for larger trucks that would be associated with moving into these buildings. But it's more for the fire department's minimum requirement of 26 feet, as you can see from the TAC requirements that are within the Planning Commission minutes that were attached to your report. And then finally, their seventh warrant is for 34 additional parking spaces above the 120% allowed. And it's really to provide enough parking that's within the development. As I mentioned, they have street spaces, approximately 80 on-street spaces that are counted in their total parking, but are open for the public to park in or visitors to park in. And so they asked for an additional 34 spaces to make sure that they could properly park all of their units within the development as a whole. They won't have gates as part of this multifamily development, so there will be free flow traffic that comes in and out of here, but they hope to utilize all of the parking internal on those streets that they're building as part of the project for residents parking, and then the visitors parking, and eventually commercial and other development that may happen moving to the north and east can be accommodated with the on-street parking on both Crestwin and the proposed Watermark Drive. Staff is concluded with our presentation, and as stated with the previous item, the developer is here if you have any specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Appreciate that very thorough report, and also the use of the spotlight opposed to the red pointer. It's much better a tool. Let me remind the board that we are taking up each warrant on a separate motion and to stay germane to that particular warrant item. Is there a motion to approve a warrant from Section 23-758 to allow 3 civic spaces to be developed along the main street frontage of this development?
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions? Alderman Massey.
Cameron, who approves warrants in other areas of the city outside of smart growth?
There are no warrants in other areas of the city outside of smart growth.
And why is that?
Because warrants are designed to work with the SMART code. They're designed to be design deviations rather than land use challenges.
And so the warrants then are special considerations given to smart growth areas that aren't allowed in other areas of the city. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And in the other areas of the city, if somebody wanted to make a change, what body would they have to go before?
I'd say that falls into the it depends category. They could come to the Planning Commission for a plan development. They could go to the Board of Zoning Appeals if they're looking to raise their fence height or location of their fence, for instance. BZA's more intended for residential structures, and it's also intended for specific tests. Warrants aren't classified under the test that go back to court rulings. Warrants, as previously stated, are design deviations for the most part that enhance the product or get them over any topography challenges or other issues that may be associated with the site. Similar to a variance, but falls under a completely different regulatory category.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Owens.
Yes, pertaining to warrant number 1, just my point is, and I've said this before when we've looked at other warrants for this particular issue of civic space, I believe that civic space should be encouraged and applauded, and I would ask that when we look to, if there's some code enhancements in the future, we want green space in our parks, in our planned developments, and so I think this is certainly a worthy warrant, and I'll be voting for it.
Vice Mayor, okay. Any other questions or comments? Been a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes. And for the reasons I stated, I'm sorry.
Yes, I agree with Alderman Owens on this.
Thank you. Warrant 1 passes. Warrant 2, to approve a warrant from Section 23-770, subset 4A, to allow buildings along the east-west road through the site and internal to the development to have a maximum building setback of 68 feet from the back of the curb. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
It's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments for staff? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, just a point that it's my opinion that good urban design has been utilized to provide for this dog park. We've got green space in front of the building, but you're still utilizing parking behind the building. So the intent of smart growth is still being met by screening the parking from view of the residents or from the public, but you're still incorporating green space, and so I think that's a worthy warrant, and I'll be voting for it.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Alderman?
So, Mr. Ross, I guess what I struggle with is that city sold smart growth to everybody as a new form of protection.
Alderman, one moment, please.
Can y'all just let me speak, please? I mean, it is germane to this. I mean, it's the reason I'm voting against the warrant.
That's fine, but when you make a bold statement like that, the process, when you say the city, all of that was done through voting and approvals and that type of thing. So, I mean, if you want to say the city, be more specific, the approval process or the applicant came forward. When you paint it that way, we're not the applicant tonight. The city's not the applicant in this particular item in front of you. So it's not about us and them type thing. Please continue.
So I just feel like, again, as these developments come before us, we have certain standards that are established. And then when all of these smart growth developments from Trevure to Thornwood, we just make up the rules as we go along. And that's what bothers the residents of Germantown. And Mayor, this isn't me talking, really. I'm just conveying the message of the people. So if you have a disagreement with me, you have a disagreement with the people. You're going to have to take that up with them. Conclude my remarks.
Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Motion carries. Warrant number 3. Is there a motion to approve a warrant from section 23-778B to allow frontage build-out to be accomplished by the use of street screen designed in an offset pattern that is not built on the same plane with the building's facades along the primary street frontage? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Alderman Owens.
Yeah, I would just say, again, here, this went to the Planning Commission no less than, I'm going to say, Cameron, 4 or 5 times that the Planning Commission sent it back because they were not satisfied. They worked and worked and worked to improve the design, to improve the building materials, and what they came up with, yes, you may see this on the face value and look at a number of warrants here and say, well, this seems excessive, but when you look at each one and analyze each one and the reason for it, they are all valid, in my opinion, warrants and create better design for the project. So perhaps, maybe there should be some, as I mentioned, some code enhancements as we move forward. But for example, with this warrant, this allows the creation of pocket parks, but still keeps the design principles of smart growth in place. And so it's sad that we have to penalize someone or make them request a warrant for putting in green space. But nevertheless, that's the case. And so I think it's a worthy warrant, and I'll be voting for it.
Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Motion carries. Item or warrant number 4, is there a motion to approve a warrant from section 23-786D2 to allow the 30% transparency to apply to only the mixed-use clubhouse building and exclude the big house and E-urban building type that are exclusive residential structures? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
So motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Alderman Owens.
Again, here I feel like we have a warrant that is designed for either an office or perhaps a commercial structure, and I applaud the developer for making it work on the, what am I trying to say, the common area building. But no residential property owner would want to have 30% transparency in their front door where people can look in and they can look out. And so in this case, I think it's more designed for a different type of structure and not residential. And so the warrant is valid.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Alderman Yonda.
I would just like to comment that this definitely is an improvement along with these other warrants on what we have for smart growth in this area. I think if it looks better, then we need to take a look at it. And I will be voting yes on this.
Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
No.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
The warrant passes. Warrant motion number 5. Is there a motion to approve a warrant from Section 23-786 D3 to allow the use of cement, I'm just going to say, someone pronounce that for me.
Fiber cement.
Very good. Fiber, very good. It was in parentheses, is it not? Fiber cement, lap siding, and EIFS as building material within this development. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any comment or questions? Alderman Owens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would say that EIFS is a superior product, at least in this environment, to stucco, very similar in scope, but more durable. And so I believe this warrant is valid, and I would encourage us to look at, again, possibly making changes to the code that would submit or substitute this EIFS instead of stucco. They've already, in fact, done a great deal of brick, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, going back and forth with the Planning Commission was not happy, or I say the Planning Commission, the Smart Growth Subcommittee was not happy, and really, I hate to use the term hammer, but continued to make them make improvement after improvement after improvement to make this a premier property that we can be proud of in Germantown.
Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza.
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
No.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Motion carries. It brings us to warrant number 6. Is there a motion to approve a warrant from Section 23-792 B2 and 23-793 A3 to allow a driveway entrance that is 37.93 feet face of curb to be located as shown on the site plan?
So moved.
So motion?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Alderman Owens.
Yes, and Cameron, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but again, this went through the Planning Commission review. This is really a direct request from the fire department to maximize the drive area so that we can get all of our engines, fire engines within there and adequately service this facility in terms of a fire. And so it's a valid warrant, and for that reason, I'll be voting yes.
Any other questions or comments?
Is that every?
Alderman Yonda.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mayor, I started before you gave me permission. Is that every driveway entrance they have? Is there
No.
just, I mean, like, looks like there's several
It's specifically related to
to that
these-
one. Okay,
This one off of the Watermark Drive, and then this one that's off of Crestwin.
okay. And I have
So off of the major roads.
a question for Chief Selberg. That will allow us to get our 70-foot ladder or 100-foot ladder in there, whatever we want? Yes, sir. Okay. When we get one that's 100-foot anymore? When we get one that's 100-foot? Yeah. Good. Okay, that's good. Good move.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Yes, Alderman Massey.
Cameron, if we needed a 37-foot curb for the purpose of fire protection, why didn't we just have that in the code? I guess I'm a little bit confused as to why this is just now coming before the board.
This is a warrant that you've seen a couple times, or that this board has seen a couple times, and it's because the SMART code is designed to make smaller streets, tighter lanes, slow people down, and to accommodate the fire department's use of the 2012 fire code, as well as the fire marshal and fire chief's request for 26-foot or wider lanes where possible. It results in a warrant a lot of times. And this is, as Alderman Owens has indicated, other small changes that we could make to the SMART code as we move to update it and really focus it in on Germantown so that we have a code that's calibrated to our community.
So I think what I'm hearing is that the ideals of the narrow streets of SMART code didn't actually line up with the needs of the fire department. Is that what you're saying?
I would say that's an ongoing debate within the development community, but we'll continue to work with the fire department and the fire marshal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
No.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
I'm going to vote yes. This is a safety issue. I think it's important that we continue to have public safety as an important priority in our community.
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza,
Only because it's a safety issue, but up against the apartments, so I vote yes on this particular warrant.
The warrant passes. That takes us to warrant 7. Is there a motion to approve a warrant from section 23-792D6 to allow an additional 34 surface parking spaces over the required number of surface parking spaces for this site?
So moved.
There's a motion. There's a motion and a second. Any comments, questions? Alderman Owens.
Yes, just a fact that 34 spaces are provided inside this development to ensure that they are adequately parked. We're still, especially in this area, a slightly suburban area that last thing we want to do is have an underparked facility. And I think the parking that is on the public streets is allowed, and that's good that we can have for that, so people can move in and move out and have that walkability. But I think since the parking is being located behind the buildings, as is in keeping with smart growth and screened from public view, it still meets the intent of smart growth, and the warrant is justified.
Any other? Yes, Alderman Yonda.
Mr. Ross, I'm a little concerned about the parking on the street. Is that what's the width of the standard street that we have there? I mean, you got 80 spaces on the street?
So the width of the street is down on Crestwin, approximately 100 feet right away with angled parking.
Okay.
And then the width of the Watermark Drive, which was the drive proposed as part of the small area plan, I may have to fact check myself, but it is wide enough to accommodate both the on-street parking as well as 11-foot wide lanes, which is standard lane width.
And are those angled parked also on that street?
No, those are parallel.
Parallel parked? Okay.
Which isn't as hard as it looks.
Yeah, I know.
Vice
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Mr. Ross, when we spoke last week in your office, as far as the on-street parking there, you had envisioned that those would be predominantly guests of the residents of that community?
Yes, ma'am, and eventually community spaces as this area develops.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
So,
Alderman?
Cameron, I guess when I'm hearing that it's going to be guest spaces, one of the things that immediately concerns me is that it's going to make it more of a transient community so that we have fewer residents who are staying long-term, and it could invite crime just from people having easier ways to park, get in and out of these developments where there's going to be a lot of cars, and that's really the concern. It's not the people that live in the apartments, it's just that they've got a bunch of cars and there's a bunch of personal property in one central location, and so it invites people into those developments because frankly they're easy targets. Parking garages are kind of the same thing. You have a bunch of cars, people go through, see if anything's unlocked, they open the door and take things out. So when you're saying that we're going to have these additional parking spaces, it doesn't make me feel better about it, quite frankly. And the other thing is, you know, with smart growth, one of the things that was promoted was the sense of green areas. And so now I'm assuming we're going to take up some of the green area with these additional parking spaces. And the other thing with smart growth, so you want to limit the number of cars. You know, that's one of the goals of smart growth, is that you limit the number of cars, the vehicular traffic. And in doing this, we're actually encouraging more cars. Not only are we encouraging more cars, we're encouraging visitors from outside Germantown to come and park and either visit the apartments or do something else nearby. I don't know what. But it just seems to go against the very essence of what city officials promised the residents of Germantown they would get from smart growth. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Yonda.
Mr. Ross, we're doing more green space in this than is required by the smart growth. Didn't we just vote on that?
There are 4 civic spaces associated
Okay.
with this development.
Okay. So is that more than we normally would?
There's not necessarily a requirement, but it's encouraged.
Okay.
And, you know, but all 4 spaces are gathering spaces throughout the development.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
No.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
No.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
The motion for the 7th warrant carries, and that concludes all of the discussion and voting on item number 14 on the agenda. It takes us to item number 15, which was moved to the consent agenda earlier in the evening. So that takes us now to item number 16 on the agenda, the project development contract number 1222-21, or at 2130 Exeter Road, Holdings, Germantown Collection Shopping Center. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Board should be familiar with this project. They approved a warrant on this site at the November 13th BMA meeting. And this is to approve the project development contract for 2130 Exeter Road Holdings at 2130 Exeter Road. This project includes the reconstruction of the old Kroger building and the construction of a new 7,000 square foot outparcel building for a total of approximately 67,000 square feet of retail space on a 5.3 acre site. As we discussed at the November 13th meeting, this project has gone through a few iterations, but the development team that has put this together has worked very hard to go through the construction drawings process and to get their development agreement prepared for this December 11th meeting, and we look forward to starting with them on this project as soon as possible.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve project development contract 1222 for 2130 Exeter Road Holdings?
Move to approve.
It's a motion.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions for staff? Seeing no one come forward, please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
The motion carries. We look forward, I know the applicant's here and would like to go home. We want you to get started quickly to put that back on the sales tax rolls. Thank you. Brings us to item 17 on the agenda, public hearing ordinance number 2017-09, amendments to the sign ordinance related to permanent signage, second reading. Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. As we discussed at the November 13th agenda, November 13th BMA meeting, these amendments to the sign ordinance relate to permanent signage and help to address concerns about visibility that have been raised by tenants in small retail and commercial centers and brought to the attention of the Design Review Commission by both residents as well as aldermen. These changes will assist in providing some visual street identity for small business owners, and it will provide a vehicle for them to apply to the Design Review Commission. It does not imply specific approval of these, they still have to go through the process. And the Design Review Commission did approve several of these amendments, which I'll step through, related specifically to a gap in commercial center sign coverage between 30,000 and 70,000 square feet in gross building area. And I want to highlight this last set of words, with limited visibility from the street. That's one of the tests that the Design Review Commission will be looking for with applications that move forward related to this, if this is passed at second and third reading. The amendments that are proposed to you also include an ordinance requirement that landscaping be planted at the base of all ground-mounted signs. This is currently recommended in the city's design review manual, but by putting it in the ordinance, it gives us teeth on the requirement, and it gives us the ability to work more in tandem with our code compliance officers with both a stick and a carrot in making sure that our commercial centers remain up to the standards that we like to see. So the amendments were highlighted in your agenda packet, but I'd like to go directly through them quickly but efficiently. And so, as stated, it focuses on 30 to 70,000 square feet of gross building area with no direct sight line from the nearest major or collector roads. And it's only permitted one small retail project directory sign. These project directory signs shall not exceed 6 feet in height and 36 square feet in total sign area. And then the height of the letters is also included as part of this and requires a minimum letter height of 3 inches so that you can make sure that it's visible. It results in roughly about 6 tenants on a sign for this particular sign area at 36 square feet. The landscaping requirements that staff work through the Design Review Commission at both their subcommittee level as well as the meeting as a whole look to require landscaping at the base of both large and small shopping centers and permanent project directory signs, and making sure that the location is similar for these smaller areas. So adding in the small retail or commercial to go with the medium-sized retail, and also having it a minimum 20 feet from the face of the curb. And then again, putting in that landscape requirement for all the permanent directory signs. And then the content portion is similar to all of our other regulations, being limited to the name of the retail center and the name of the tenants within the center. And then again, making sure that materials and illumination also are illuminated by only external lighting only, unless otherwise approved by the Design Review Commission. So this is exactly the language that's used in our medium and large shopping center and commercial center developments. It's just being applied to smaller, limited site visibility commercial developments between 30 and 70,000 square feet. And a good example is right across the street from us at Germantown Plaza. This particular sign is 6 feet tall with 36 square feet of sign area space associated with it. So this is an example that you can go see, touch, and feel, and I brought this up at the first reading. We are available for any questions as it relates to the DRC's discussion on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve on second reading ordinance 2017-9, amendments to Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code, the Germantown sign ordinance related to permanent signs?
Move to approve.
So motion?
Second.
So motion and a second. It's been properly motioned and seconded, and it's on the table for discussion. We also have a public hearing this evening, and so now I would open a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come forth before the board and speak to this particular action? Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak on this particular agenda item this evening? Third and final call. Would anyone like to speak on this particular item? Seeing no one come forward, the public hearing is now closed. We return to consideration of this motion. Is there any discussion or any questions for staff? Okay. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a good move on the part of us to give our corporate citizens, commercial citizens, an opportunity to be seen. There are a few places in town that, actually one particular location in town where they're blocked by a couple other buildings, and there's a potential of others that will come down the line. But I think this is a good ordinance, and I highly recommend that my associates here will vote on it as well, as I will.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Ross, when we met, we discussed the one development that this does apply to now, and in our executive session, you made mention of the other. Can you describe exactly which properties we're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. The Crylike Center at Forest Hill Irene and Village Shops Drive is the existing center, and then there is a potential, and it is limited in its view off of that, off of Forest Hill Irene by the existing buildings that are on the frontage. The second potential is a redevelopment of Landmark Center on Wolf Trail Cove, and if Mr. Walker and his partners were to assemble property in such a way that it met either the 8-acre threshold that exists within the ordinance or the 30 to 70,000 square feet threshold that's being proposed as part of this ordinance amendment, that those businesses that would be further back off of Wolf Trail Cove and behind those buildings that are part of the existing Landmark Center and the offices would qualify because they wouldn't be visible from the major road.
Thank you.
Alderman Yonda?
Is there a way for us to limit this in the future? Just say these two can go with that? Or I have confidence in the design review board, but they can decline even though someone is meeting the square footage, et cetera. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. This does not, these amendments to the sign ordinance do not imply any administrative review process, approval process, or tacit approval by the Design Review Commission. A good application and justification of both the size, intent, and limited view angles will have to be brought forward to justify any sign being put forward within the city of Germantown.
Okay, that's what I thought. I appreciate that.
Any other questions for staff? Alderman Owens.
Just a comment, I think. I've been to the site in question, and I certainly believe that there is a need for this type of signage. My only discomfort, I guess, if that's not the right word, my preference would be that if we could, because this is so site-specific, if we could not grant a variance from the sign ordinance that would permit this type of sign on the property without amending our entire sign ordinance. And I'd like it if that's something we could maybe look at between now and third reading. I'd like to move this forward to third reading, but if there was a way to do that, I think that would be my preference instead of amending the whole ordinance. But I certainly feel like a sign of this nature is needed at that location, in particular that you spoke of earlier.
We can certainly work with the city attorney's office and Mr. McLean, counsel to the DRC.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or comments? Sure.
So Alderman Owens, you're concerned that this is going to kind of pop up in other areas of the city, because that's where I am too at this point. Are you kind of thinking along the same lines?
Well, based on what Mr. Ross is telling me, it is only 2 locations, and I know it's tightly crafted. The ordinance that we have is just, my preference would be when you have a particular location that has an issue and others don't, that it seems like that's the appropriate way for a variance. But it seems to be my recollection that our city attorney told us at one point that the DRC cannot grant sign variances, and so that's where I was coming with that. I do think that, in answer to your question, I don't know if I answered it, the ordinance is crafted in such a way that we don't have to worry about it proliferating and being a whole host of those type of signs all throughout the city.
To the Alderman, I would like to say, for the benefit of the work that staff put into this, that it was not crafted with the intention of just the one existing development and the second potential development. That's just the way it laid out, that we looked at a specific gap in coverage for commercial development areas, and working with the Design Review Commission and their chair, we settled on 30,000 square feet, and then researched how many commercial centers actually had 30,000 square feet, and that's where we found that it was only the one existing, and then potential for another one if it assembled the property in a particular way.
Any other questions?
Well, to Alderman Owen's point, why couldn't we use the variance process rather than amending our sign ordinance?
We'll be happy to research the previous legal opinion and provide that prior to the third reading.
Off the top of your head, you just don't know then?
No, sir, I do not.
That's fair enough.
Any other questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes again.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owen.
Yes.
The motion carries. That takes us to item number 18 on the agenda, project development contract number 1218, Take 5, oil change. Mr. Ross.
Thank you once again, Mayor, members of the board. Purpose of this agenda item is to approve the project development contract 1218 for Take 5 oil change. This project includes the construction of approximately 2,400 square foot commercial building at the city's western edge on Poplar Avenue. This is a very small site, 0.376 acres. Prior attempts to develop this have met with significant either challenges to the property, circulation issues related to connecting into the city of Memphis, or other issues as outlined in the background. However, in February of 2017, Take 5 Oil Change applied for the approval of the preliminary and final site plan to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission did approve this site plan as final, along with 6 warrants that were associated with it, on the 7th of March. And in April, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen gave final approval for those 6 warrants as was required by 23-745, as we discussed as a part of our previous discussion. This is a standard development contract. As noted, the site area is small at 0.376 acres. The building is also small at 2,373 square feet. It does meet the height requirements. It will be an in and out type of space. So the parking that they have provided is 7 spaces for those folks that will be working there. And then it meets the minimum parking requirements of 7 spaces. Staff is open to any questions, and Mr. Brian Salick is here with us from Houston, Texas, as a project representative.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a motion to approve project development contract 1218 for Take 5 oil change?
Move to approve.
It's a motion.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions for staff? Please call the roll.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Yes.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
Motion carries. Welcome to our city. Have a safe trip back to Houston. We look forward to you being open. Brings us to item number 19 on the agenda. Ordinance 2017-08, amend Chapter 2, Article 5, Division 5, Section 182 of the Code of Ordinances, revisions to Neighborhood Preservation Commission membership requirements, third and final reading. Mr. Lawton. I was ready to say Mr. Ross, but go ahead.
Yeah, we're done with him. What you said will be long in my presentation. So essentially, this is third and final reading on this ordinance. It will eliminate the requirement for the Neighborhood Preservation Commission that calls for a representative from the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission be added to this commission. Given the nature of the NPC and how they've evolved over time, those 2 positions are really not warranted. This comes at the request of the staff, the Alderman liaison, and the chairman to this body to make this change. That is what's before the board this evening. You will still have 12 members, but you just will no longer have to have that requirement for those two specifically.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Is there a motion to approve on third reading ordinance 2017-08, amending Chapter 2, Article 5, Division 5, Section 182 of the Code of Ordinances?
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Motion carries. We've reached the conclusion of our meeting. We will not have a second meeting in Monday. We do have a special call meeting on the 18th. I wish to, extend happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. We will see you in 2018. We're adjourned.